Hello, good evening, and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to the third stage of our Conquer Prelims program, where we bring for you a complete PYQ analysis of each and every subject from 2013 to the year 2024. One by one on every Wednesday and Saturday at 7 p.m. we shall be carrying out a detailed PYQ analysis and also discussing the concepts associated behind those questions so that you are in a better position to understand those concepts also and have your revision thereby. Now, in this entire stage, we shall be covering all the various different subjects, and you can take a look at the schedule here. So today, we are going to have a complete discussion for the subject of geography for the past 11 years, analyzing the various different topics which have been asked. Then 15th of March, that is Saturday, we are going to have a discussion of IR by Chetan Sir. Then next Wednesday, again, environment and ecology discussion along with the analysis of the protected areas and so on. Then 22nd of March, we shall be having a detailed discussion of Indian polity. 26th of March, history by Abhishek Sir. Then 29th March, economy discussion by Shyam Sir. And 2nd of April is when science and tech discussion by Hima ma'am. So thereby we are going to ensure that your overall holistic preparation and revision is on track and you are in the best positions possible situation when it comes to appearing for the prelims examination. Now today we are going to have the discussion of these PYQs on the basis of various different topics. We have classified the PYQs in terms of which are the topics which are most important and which are repeated quite often, which have maximum weightage come the prelims examination, and thereby generally depending upon the difficulty level as well as the weightage in the prelims, that is where we are going to have a discussion. So first of all, we are going to discuss the questions which have been asked from physical geography. Climatology is where we are going to start with, because every year, regardless of the pattern, you will see that climatology and concept-based questions from climatology, they are quite oftentimes asked and repeated. Then geomorphology, oceanography. Then we will come to Indian geography, including the physiographical divisions, including the drainage system, the soil types, the soil conditions, and so on. Then we will discuss the questions which are asked in the case of the world map. Now, some of these portions of the world map, they fall under the category of international relations, so they will be discussed at that point of time. Then natural vegetation that you find, again here also you have a lot of convergence with environment ecology. So some of the questions which you might feel are there in the portion of geography, they shall be discussed as and when suitable in terms of the topics of environment ecology. And then rotation and revolution of Earth, again questions are asked quite often in the past few years. Questions such as Coriolis force. Now these questions are quite simple, quite conceptual, but at the same time, they are important. So that is where we are going to have a discussion about. Starting with the first aspect and the first unit, that is climatology. Now, first of all, when you take a look at these PYQs, how should you approach this session? What should be your overall idea? So we will take a look at the PYQ. We will take a look at the question first, right? Then we will be having a discussion thereby. So I would urge you to put your answer in the comment section so that you also get a kind of an analysis about your preparation level. Then we will be discussing the conceptual portion associated with that question. Concept associated, be it static, be it the portion associated with the dynamic areas. So these are the pattern in which the question discussion shall be carried out. Now, starting with the first question. Now consider the following statements. This is a statement-based question. So statement 1, thickness of the troposphere at the equator is much greater as compared to the poles. Statement 2, at the equator, heat is transported to greater heights by strong convection currents. It is very important for you to understand both of these statements in order to solve the statement-based questions. So it talks about the variability in terms of the height of the troposphere, right? So thickness of troposphere at the equator is much greater as compared to the poles. Is that correct? Yes, the statement in itself independently is correct. Now, why is it that the thickness of the troposphere at equator is the highest? There are various different reasons for that. We shall be talking about it and throwing some light on that as well. But let us take a look at the statement 2. At the equator, heat is transported to the great heights by strong convection currents. Convection currents as in that when the air gets heated up, the air rises higher up, and thereby there is a kind of a convection current. So this is generally observed in the region around equator. So second statement is also correct, and in fact the second statement ends up explaining the first statement. So here the correct answer will be A, that is both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, and statement 2 explains statement 1. Now let us take a brief look at this. So basically, you would have studied the tricellular model of atmospheric circulation. In that, you will observe that around the region of equator, you have a rising air column. Now, this is because of a thermal low pressure, which is created at the region of equator. Now, when we talk about the pressure zones across the planet, you have dynamic pressure zones. For example, the subpolar low pressure, that is dynamic. Then subtropical high pressure, that is also dynamic, which is influenced by the wind movement, the air movement. At the same time, you have thermal pressure zones where the pressure conditions are attributed purely by the factor of temperature. For example, very cold conditions at the region of the poles ends up creating a thermal high pressure, or what is also referred to as a polar high. You will observe. So you have equatorial low and a polar high. Now, due to this, you basically end up experiencing a rise in the air column. This pushes the height of the troposphere. You see, troposphere's height is different at the region of the poles and is also different at the region of equator. At the region of equator, and this has got a seasonal variability. Why? Because the heating of the ground and the heating of the air during the summer season will be different as compared to during the winter season, right? So that is why at the region of equator, you will find that troposphere's height is roughly around 16 to 18 kilometers. Whereas at the region of the poles, it is around 8 to 9 kilometers or 8 to 10 kilometers. Now, one of the reason is because of the fact that basically the air rises up due to heating. But there is another reason as well why you have a swelling up of the troposphere at the region of equator. If you think about it, then that has got to do again with the basic concept of rotation and revolution of the planet. Many of us, we don't consider that as important, but nonetheless, that plays a significant part in swelling up the troposphere. And that is because of what we refer to as the centrifugal force. Now, that is also important in terms of expanding the tropospheric height at the region of equator. Why? What is this centrifugal force? Centrifugal force is a force acting away from the center. In simple terms, any rotating object experiences two different forces. One is the force acting towards the center, that is centripetal. Another is the force acting away from the center, that is centrifugal. Now, when you consider planet Earth also rotates on its axis at a very high speed, where the rotational speed at the region of equator can be very, very high in terms of thousands of or hundreds of kilometers per hour. Now here, as this rotation of west to east happens, that is where the centrifugal force will be acting outwards. Now, this outward acting centrifugal force will end up leading to a kind of a variation in terms of the tropospheric height. Now, how does that influence the climate? Or what do we have to do in terms of the matter? Let's suppose troposphere is higher or thicker at the region of equator. How does it impact us? Well, that ensures that atmospheric circulation, which ends up influencing all the climatic conditions that we see, for example, upper atmospheric winds, jet streams, etc., they are something which are restricted to the troposphere itself. And also, that troposphere ends up marking the condition of a continuous fall in temperature. Because as you move beyond the troposphere, that is when the temperature again starts to increase. So if you consider this to be the surface in the region of troposphere, what do you find? You will find a case of a positive lapse rate. That is, as you move higher up, reduction in temperature is observed. Beyond troposphere, after crossing the thin layer of tropopause, as you reach the region of stratosphere, now in the region of stratosphere, due to absorption of ultraviolet rays by the ozone layer or by the ozonosphere, that is when the heat starts to increase, and that is when you observe a negative lapse rate. So that is where this becomes important in terms of limiting the climatic conditions and the climatic influences that you experience on the surface. Okay, UPSC tends to ask this question about the layers of atmosphere in prelims and repeats it in the mains exam also. So that is something where the concept should be clear in terms of positive as well as the negative lapse rate. Now, after this, moving on to the second question. Now observe again, this has got to do with the amount of insolation, the solar radiation which falls on the surface. With reference to Earth's atmosphere, which of the following statements is correct? Now here, on the face of it, understand, when you have these long passage type of options, on the face of it, it might seem confusing or it might seem difficult, but it is very simple if you break this down. The total amount of insolation received at the equator is roughly about 10 times that which is received at the region of the poles. Infrared rays constitute roughly 2/3 of the solar radiation. Infrared waves are largely absorbed by water vapor that is concentrated in the lower atmosphere. Infrared waves are a part of the visible spectrum of electromagnetic waves of solar radiation. Right? Now here, which is going to be the correct answer? Few of you are giving the correct answer here. Very good. So here, if you understand this, first of all, now this has got to do with the heating of the atmosphere. That is the topic here. How does the atmosphere primarily get heated? Does the atmosphere get heated by the incoming solar radiation or by the outgoing terrestrial radiation? That is what the question is about. It might have confused you in terms of the data pointer 10 times, 2/3. That is all meant to confuse you guys. As simple as that. Understand a simple concept. Let's suppose you consider the region of the atmosphere. Right? Now, how does the heating of the atmosphere happen? First of all, you have the high energy solar rays which end up reaching the Earth's surface. Now, this is having a large amount of energy. So that is why it is having a short wave. This is also referred to as the short wave solar radiation. Okay. Now, after that, the ground surface heats up and the ground surface starts acting as a hotter object in itself. But still, even if the ground surface heats up, what is the maximum temperature that the ground will achieve? 30 degrees, 40 degrees, 50 degrees, 55 degrees, not more than that. As compared to the sun, it will still be pretty cool, but nonetheless, it starts acting as a hotter object. And that is when that hot body starts emitting rays, right? And that is where you have the low energy waves which are radiated back. This is having low energy as compared to the incoming solar radiation. So that is why it is also what is referred to as the long wave terrestrial radiation, which means it is having lower energy. Right? Now, this long wave terrestrial radiation is low in energy. So that means there is a greater probability of it being trapped by the components of the atmosphere. One of the components of the atmosphere is also water vapor or H2O. That H2O is also limited and largely restricted within the region of troposphere itself. Now here, if you have to, or if you have, let's suppose, some confusion in terms of infrared rays, whether it is a part of the visible spectrum or not, just understand the concept of VIBGYOR. That is the spectrum of light which is emitted by the sun. Now you see, the solar rays, they are basically, or the light that we get from the sun is a white light. It is a combination of all these different spectrum of light waves that you have, from violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. So here, this VIBGYOR, the energy level reduces as you move from violet to red. Energy level will tend to reduce as you move from violet to red. Now think about it. Here you also have the ultraviolet rays, right? And here at the other end, you have the infrared rays. So infrared rays will have a longer wavelength and lowest amount of energy. So infrared rays will mostly be generated where? When you talk about the low energy, that is the long wave terrestrial radiation. And that is where it will be absorbed by the water vapor. So now if you take a look at this question, so infrared waves are largely absorbed by water vapor that is concentrated in the lower atmosphere. So that will be the correct answer in this case. Please understand, as we will take a look at the other questions as well, you will come across the fact that many of the times UPSC likes to throw data pointers, names at you just to confuse you, right? Because you know the basic fact that at the region of the lower latitude, that is a region of heat surplus, insolation surplus. Higher latitude, that is the region of the poles, that is the region of heat deficit. Right? So that is why this 10 times can play with your mind. This 2/3 can play with your mind. But understand that where the concept lies, that is the correct answer. So always take a look at the detailed understanding of each of these options. Now, before we proceed to the next question, an announcement for all of you regarding the Holy offer, where you get flat 60% off plus 6 months free extension. Use the code IES English and avail the discount as soon as possible. Now moving to the third question. Again, a question dealing with those of water vapor. So this is one area where UPSC is repeating the questions. It can be asked again. Now this time, if you take a look at this question, this is a complex mixture not only of the knowledge of layers of atmosphere, but at the same time, the humidity level. So let us take a look at this question. With reference to water vapor, which of the following statements is or are correct? It is a gas, the amount of which decreases with altitude. Second, its percentage is maximum at the region of the poles, right? Now, which of these are correct? Now, when you consider the water vapor indeed is a gas, isn't it? The gaseous version of liquid water droplets that we have. So it is largely to be present in the region of troposphere itself, right? And most of the water vapor is restricted to a height of around 5 to 7 kilometers from the surface of the planet. Understand, troposphere overall constitutes close to around 80% of the overall mass of the entire atmosphere. So that is where troposphere will consist majority of the water vapor. So it is a gas, the amount of which decreases with altitude. This is correct. Its percentage is maximum at the poles. This is incorrect. Why? This is where I give you an important concept and we talk about it. Most of you would be aware, or if you are not aware, understand the concept of carrying capacity. What do we understand by the concept of carrying capacity? Carrying capacity represents the overall amount of moisture that any air parcel can hold at any given temperature. After all, that is what humidity is, right? Water vapor content is what represents the amount of moisture, and that is what humidity is. Now, understand one basic thing. How do you break this down so that you don't have to ratify it? Let's suppose you consider any air parcel, right? it will have various different air molecules, isn't it? Now these air molecules, they will have some amount of energy. Let's suppose this has got a temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. Let's assume. Now, if you talk about water vapor, where will water vapor find itself? Water vapor will be able to accommodate itself only within the gaps which are there. That is where the water vapor will be present. Let's suppose this air parcel has got the ability to carry 5 grams of vapor. Right. Now, if you were by some reason or the other to heat this air parcel, let's suppose there is a summer season, or let's suppose you move to the lower latitude around the region of the tropics or the region of the equator. Let's suppose you have increased the temperature now to 35 degrees Celsius. Now what will happen? Greater temperature means these air particles will develop a kind of a greater kinetic motion. They will end up moving with greater energy. Heat, after all, is nothing but energy. So some of these particles will escape, right? Will escape here and there. And within the sample that we are considering, you will have now lesser number of air particles as compared to before. Now, where will we have the water vapor? In the gaps in between. So now you will have greater amount of gaps as compared to earlier, isn't it? So here, if earlier, let's suppose 5 grams of water vapor were available, or the air could carry that 5 grams, now the air will be able to carry how much? Maybe 10 grams, right? Maybe 10 grams. So what do we observe? That carrying capacity of air, and this is important even for the portion of humidity, that carrying capacity of air is directly proportional to the temperature, and keep this in proportional to temperature. So that means if the temperature of any air parcel is high, the air will be able to accommodate greater amount of particles. If the temperature of the air parcel is lower, its ability to carry the water vapor will be lower. So that means what? Wherever the temperature is higher across the planet, there will be a greater abundance of water vapor in the atmosphere. Wherever the temperature is lower across the planet, during any season, in any region, that will mean lower amount of water vapor. Now apply the same logic in the second part. Its percentage is maximum at the poles. At the poles, what do we have? Low temperature, isn't it? And here, basically, that means ability to hold water vapor will be very less. So vapor content will be less. So where will the amount of water vapor be high? Higher amount of water vapor is generally to be found in the region of equator or in the region around subtropics. That is where you also get the analysis of absolute humidity. That absolute humidity tends to reduce as you move from the region of equator to the poles. And absolute humidity is what? The overall amount of water vapor which is carried per volume of air parcel. So that becomes important. So here, which is the correct answer? The correct answer is A, that is 1 only. I hope the concept behind it is understood. Now, then we move on to the next question. Consider the following description. This is associated with the world climate. Annual and daily range of temperature is low. Precipitation occurs throughout the year. Precipitation varies between 50 to 250 centimeter. What is this type of climate? Now let's suppose we have not studied the Köppen's classification. Let's suppose we have not studied the global climatic classification. After all, most of the candidates face difficulty in rectifying, and they do rectify the entire global classification. So how do you solve this type of a question if you have gone there unprepared about the world climate? By simple application of logic. So here, annual and daily ranges of temperature is low, means that temperature is consistent. how do we have a consistent temperature, or where will we have a consistent temperature? Temperature consistency is maintained when you have enough amount of water vapor in the air, so that water vapor can trap heat, right? So that the ground surface does not lose heat very rapidly. So this tells you that there is abundance of vapor, abundance of water vapor, right? And hence there is heat, or heat lost is very less. And hence that means consistent or low variation is high. Now rainfall can be very high either at the region of equator where daily evaporation is happening, or in some coastal area where the onshore winds are bringing you rainfall, right? Now, precipitation occurs throughout the year. That is something we have already established. Then precipitation varies between 50 centimeter to 250 centimeter. Now you see at the region of equator, those countries, those places which are at the region of equator, what is the amount of rainfall received? Somewhere around 400 centimeter to 1000 centimeter, 500 centimeter, 300 centimeter. It will never fall back to 50 centimeter in the case of equatorial climate, right? So that is something which you will not find in the region of equator. Now let us take a look at the option. So that establishes not equatorial, right? It is not equatorial. Equatorial would have had greater amount of rainfall. So equatorial climate, obviously not. China type climate. China type climate has got summer rainfall because of the shifting of the ITCZ. That is when the winds become onshore and they give you rainfall, right? So this also cannot happen because here the rainfall is throughout the year. Then humid subtropical climate. Again, in that case, the variation of temperature will be high. So the correct answer in this case is marine west coast climate. As per Köppen classification, that is what is regarded as CFB. So if you take a look at the CFB, or the marine west coast climate, this is typically to be found in the temperate regions in the western coast. Now understand, why do we get daily rainfall or rainfall throughout the year? That is owing to the presence of westerly winds, right? This is also what is sometimes regarded as the British type of climate. So that is where the westerly winds will bring rainfall. Now here that means you don't have an extremity of temperature. Mind you, at the same latitude, if you go somewhere here in the region of the Central Asian steppes, in this region you will find extremity of temperature, but here you will find moderate temperature to exist. Okay. For your examination, all those who are preparing for the prelims, rather than going through all the various different climate types, just keep in mind a few of them and the rainfall distribution in the few of them. That is equatorial, monsoonal, British type, Mediterranean, China type, right? These 4 to 5 different types of climate. When do you receive rainfall? How much rainfall is received? That is all that is required for the examination. So equatorial, rainfall throughout the year with greater amount of precipitation to the range of 250 to 400, 500 centimeter. Then monsoonal, where you have large amount of rainfall, but that is concentrated in the hottest 3 to 4 months of the year, right? Then you have British, that is basically the CFB or the marine type. Then after that, Mediterranean, where due to the shifting of the pressure belts, you basically will have summer dry, because during the summer season in this Mediterranean belt, you have the high pressure zone which is created, the subtropical high pressure zone. The sinking air creates a dynamic high pressure, means no rainfall. But during the winter, the same high pressure zone shifts somewhere here. That brings about westerly winds in action, causes rains in the region. So this is winter rainfall. And then China type, where you have summer rainfall owing to the shift of the ITCZ, which attracts the winds which become onshore. So just keep in mind these 5 relevant for the prelims. Okay, it will make your task much easier. Now, the next question, which is also a statement-based question. The atmosphere is heated more by incoming solar radiation than by terrestrial radiation. Carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are good absorbers of long-wave radiation. Now think about it. We have just now talked about the incoming solar radiation and the outgoing radiation as well. So think about it and understand carefully each of the words. Now, when we talk about the atmosphere, now incoming solar radiation, very high energy, that passes through the atmospheric particles without having much of an impact. That will heat up the ground surface, and the long wave terrestrial radiation will be the one which will heat it up. UPSC had asked the same question earlier as well, prior to 2013. So it is again a repetition of the same concept. As you can see, the concepts are repeated from here. So the first statement in itself is incorrect. That in itself will give you the answer that basically statement 1 is incorrect. You have only one option for that, and that is D. Now, carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are good absorbers of long wave radiation, that they are, and that is what eventually leads to the greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect. Okay? And if the dominance of carbon dioxide, water vapor, methane, nitrous oxide, that starts to increase, that is when the overall warming level also will increase, right? Now, after this, the next question. Now, this is again one of those areas which has been repeated in the past couple of years. Which of the following is or are correct inference or inferences from isothermal maps in the month of January? The isotherms deviate to the north over the ocean and to the south over the continents. In the month of January is what you have to keep in mind. The presence of cold ocean currents, Gulf Stream and the North Atlantic Drift make the North Atlantic Ocean colder and the isotherms bend towards the north. Now, first of all, the study about the isotherms in this case, very briefly, but before that, take a look at the thermal image. Thermal image of the region of the various parts of the planet during the month of January. Now, we know one basic thing about the heating of land and water. When we talk about land, right, and when we compare it to the region around any water body, now the solar rays which are received or the insolation which is received is restricted to the tiny surface or tiny thickness around 2 to 3 inches in the case of the land area. Whereas in the case of water body, that heat gets dissipated. So that means land heats up faster. Heats up faster. Now the implication of this in terms of concept, daytime temperature over the land will be higher. And in terms of season, during the summer, land will be hotter, right? Now during night time is when the land will lose heat, right? Now in the case of the land, all the heat is restricted to the surface, whereas in the case of water, the heat has been distributed. So all this heat will be lost very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. Because all of that was restricted to the surface. Whereas in the case of water body, it will take a larger amount of time to lose heat. Which means what? Land cools down faster. Cools down faster. And what is the conceptual implication of this? During night, land will be colder as compared to the water body. And during winters, land is colder as compared to the ocean. During winters, land is colder. Right? Now if you take a look at the thermal image here, Now, in this case, observe that the land areas, they are much colder to the water bodies at the same latitude. Isn't it? Land areas are much more colder. Now, how will that translate in the form of isothermal image? If you observe the isotherms, this is what the isotherms will show. If you observe here, it is a simple replication of the thermal imaging as well. Now, to understand whether they move to the north or over the ocean or to the south over the continents, a very simple logic that you can apply, a very simple concept that you can apply. In this case of isothermal image, draw any line at any particular latitude. Let's suppose I draw this line and I find various different areas, A, then B, then C. Now, temperature at A, as per this latitude or isothermal image, if I have to understand the temperature at A. Now, temperature at A, if you take a look at the isotherm, will be how much? Minus 25 degrees Celsius. What is the temperature at B in the region of the Atlantic? You have the 0 degrees Celsius isotherm which passes through it. 0 degrees Celsius. Temperature at C, right? Again, if you observe, minus 12.5 degrees Celsius isotherm is passing through it. Right? So, what do we understand from this? That at the same latitude, if you observe the isotherms, to experience a temperature of minus 25 degrees Celsius, you will have to move northward. So that means isotherms over the region of the ocean, they will have to bend northwards when it is the winter season. And when again from oceans you come to the continent, right? Let's suppose this minus 12.5 or 0, any of the isotherms that you take, observe as you move from ocean to continent, it will have to bend southwards because that particular latitude at which the ocean experiences 0 degrees Celsius, land would have experienced that 0 degree at much lower latitude because of substantial cooling, right? So apply the basic logic of heating and cooling, you will get the answer in this. Now, if I again take you back to this question, the isotherms deviate to the north over the oceans and towards the south over the continent. This is correct, right? Because of the cooling of the land. The presence of cold ocean currents, Gulf Stream and North Atlantic Drift, that in itself is wrong because Gulf Stream is one of the strongest warm ocean currents anywhere across the planet. So this basically becomes wrong. So that means the correct answer is A, that is 1 only, right? Now, mind you, again this year Gulf Stream has been in news, so you can get in an implied question associated with Gulf Stream as well, right? Now, after this, the next question. The temperature contrast between continents and oceans is greater during summer than in winter. The specific heat of water is more than that of the land surface. What is specific heat? The amount of heat required by any state of matter to increase or observe an increase of temperature by 1 degree Celsius. So obviously, water takes a larger period of time to experience an increase by 1 degree Celsius. Greater amount of solar energy is required for a larger duration to raise the temperature of the water body by 1 degree. Whereas in the case of land, all the heat is restricted to the surface, immediate rise. So obviously, specific heat of water is more than that of the land surface. This is correct. But the first statement, that is an interesting and a confusing statement at the same time. Temperature contrast between continents and oceans is greater during summer as compared to during winter. Now, in order to understand this, demystify or break this down. For example, when we talk about the region of the land areas, right? Now, land areas during the summer, what is the temperature that they can attain? Land areas can attain a temperature maybe around 30 degrees We are talking about the coastal areas, 30 degrees, 40 degrees, right? 30 to 45 degrees Celsius. What about the water body? That is the oceans. In the case of the oceans, the temperature will largely hover around 25 degrees Celsius. Or let's suppose if you have to talk about the entire range, you will get around 15 to 25 degrees Celsius in most of the cases. This is during the summer. Now during winter, the land temperature can plummet, and we have seen it can plummet to around minus 25 degrees Celsius as well. But when we talk about the water body, it holds that heat. During winter, the water is comparatively warmer as compared to the land. So here you will have maybe around 10 degree or 12 degrees Celsius to maybe around 25 again. So here you observe the temperature difference. Temperature difference during the winter months is close to around 40 degrees Celsius, 30 to 40 degrees Celsius. That is massive. Whereas during the summer, you have around 15-20 degrees Celsius temperature difference, right? So that is why temperature contrast between the continents and oceans is greater during the summer in itself is incorrect. So when the statement 1 is incorrect, you have the direct answer, that is D. Okay, same is the case in terms of the latitudes as well. As you move to the higher latitudes, temperature contrast again is much higher during the winter, right? Now, after that, consider the following statements. High clouds primarily reflect solar radiation and cool the surface of Earth. Low clouds have a high absorption rate of infrared radiation emanating from the Earth's surface and thus cause a warming effect. Now, if you analyze this, high clouds here, which is the type of cloud which is being referred when we talk about the high clouds in this case? Which is the type of cloud here? It is referring to cirrus type of clouds. Cirrus clouds. Okay. Cirrus clouds are the high altitude clouds. But when we talk about low level clouds, which are those low level clouds? You basically have stratus, cumulus, as well as stratocumulus. These are the three low-level clouds. We are not considering the multi-layered clouds like nimbostratus or stratocumulus in this particular case, right? So when you take a look at this, high-level clouds. Now, are these cirrus clouds dense? The answer is no. The cirrus clouds are not dense. So if you consider them, let's suppose if you consider the high-level clouds, they will have a kind of a very thin spread. Right. Whereas the low-level clouds, which are formed due to evaporation at a lower height, will have a considerably greater amount of thickness. Isn't it? Now, when you take a look at it, this high-level cloud, will it be able to provide cooling to the surface? The high-intensity short-wave solar radiation, where the terrestrial radiation which passes, that terrestrial radiation, low in energy, will always be reflected back. Okay? Because these clouds are not so thick to block the incoming solar radiation, but they are thick enough to block the low energy terrestrial or long wave terrestrial radiation. So high level clouds will always end up causing heating. That is why in the case of environment ecology, when you study the concept of the geoengineering, right? In geoengineering, what do you study? That is how to cool the surface. One of the techniques of cooling the surface is thinning of the cirrus cloud. This is again one of the PYQs or previously asked questions in prelims by UPSC, right? So that is basically what you will observe in this case. But when we talk about the low level clouds, what are these low clouds? So in this case, the solar radiation which is coming, the clouds are thick enough, isn't it? So that will block the solar radiation and that will be reflected back by the effect of albedo. So this will provide cooling. Roughly, what is the percentage of solar radiation which is reflected by the clouds, low level clouds? Overall, if you study the heat budget of planet Earth, you will find that the low level clouds reflect close to around 27% of the incoming solar rays. So that is again a massive chunk. That is why they bring about cooling. Okay, so here low clouds have high absorption of infrared radiation emanating from the Earth's surface and cause a warming effect. Incorrect. High clouds have a cooling effect. Incorrect. So the correct answer in this case is D. That is neither 1 nor 2. Okay, I hope the concept behind it is something which is understood. Now, the next question. It involves multiple of the different concepts and different chapters brought together. Jet streams occur in the northern hemisphere only. Only some cyclones develop an eye. The temperature inside the eye of the cyclone is nearly 10 degrees Celsius lesser than that of the surrounding. Again, UPSC has tried the same trick, throwing the data pointer in order to confuse the candidates so that the candidates get confused whether it is 10 degrees Celsius lower, 5 degrees Celsius lower or not. That entire thing is a facade, right? So jet streams occur in northern hemisphere only. That is incorrect. If you take a look at the jet streams, there are 4 permanent jet streams, right? So they are present in the northern hemisphere as well as in the southern hemisphere. Okay, so first statement is incorrect. Second statement, only some cyclones develop an eye. This is a correct statement. Because when we talk about temperate cyclones, they might or might not develop an eye depending upon how the frontogenesis has happened, how the frontal formation has happened, isn't it? But when it comes to tropical cyclones, all the tropical cyclones will have a distinct development of an eye. So here, only some cyclones develop an eye is correct. Now, the temperature inside the eye of the cyclone is nearly 10 degrees Celsius less. Now, this in itself, the entire predicament is incorrect. Why? Because the temperature inside the eye of the cyclone is higher as compared to the temperature in the surroundings, isn't it? So here this will also be incorrect. The correct answer is C. Now, very briefly talking about the region or the formation of the tropical cyclone in general, you will observe that this is a region of an intense low pressure, a very intense low pressure over the water bodies. Now that will lead to winds coming in, and the winds will be rising up in a spiral manner. As the winds rise up, they will lose temperature here. Now, as the condensation is happening, that is where the state of matter changes from gas to liquid. And whenever that happens, there is a heat which is released, that is the latent heat of condensation, right? Whenever you have change of state, latent heat is consumed or released. So that latent heat of condensation is released. Now, where will that latent heat of condensation be released? Wherever you have the rising air or the movement of air where condensation was happening, isn't it? So that heat will be released in the center here. So that is where in the central portion, you will generally come across a higher temperature. Now, higher temperature, will higher temperature ever lead to condensation happening? No. For condensation, you need lower temperature, not higher temperature. So higher temperature means lack of condensation, isn't it? Now, in the central portion, that means there is a substantial lack of condensation, and that will lead to no clouds. And that is what you refer to as the eye of the cyclone. Eye of cyclone. Okay? So that is what you will observe in the central portion of the eye. So hence the temperature inside the eye of the cyclone is 10 degrees Celsius less? No, it is higher as compared to the surrounding. Okay, so I hope now it is clear. Any disruptions whatsoever is taken care of. So hence the temperature in the eye is always higher as compared to that of the surrounding. And we have also talked about why there will be no cloud formation and why in fact there will be that eye which will be created, right? Now, after this, the next question. During a thunderstorm, the thunder in the skies is produced by the which of the following factors? Meeting of cumulonimbus clouds in the sky, lightning that separates the nimbus clouds. Nimbus basically refers to the rain-bearing clouds. That is what the term nimbus stands for. Nimbus, stratus, cumulonimbus, these are rain-bearing clouds. Violent upward movement of air and water particles. Which of these produces thunder that you experience in the sky on a regular basis? So again, very simple if you know the basics why the thunder happens. So why is it that thunder and lightning occurs? Let's suppose you have this cloud. So we were basically talking about the thunderstorms, right? The question is, how does the thunder and lightning take place? That is the main aspect here. Why do we have this thunder and lightning? So basically, if you understand, whenever you talk about any cloud, now cloud is basically made out of condensates. The condensates can be supercooled liquid or ice particles, whatever kind of condensation has happened, that will form the clouds. Now think about it, as you move higher up in the clouds, there will be further lower temperature, so greater weight of the ice particles. That means the ice particles will start falling. It is these ice particles which fall, and then that causes rainfall, that brings us rain, isn't it? Now, if you have an ice particle which is present, which is suspended at a greater height, they start to fall. Now, as they fall, they will move and rub against multiple smaller particles as well, isn't it? Now, think about it. There is this one small particle, a larger ice particle is falling, rubbing against it and moving down. There will be an exchange of electrons. The falling particle will gain the electron. It will rub against multiple particles. It will keep on gaining the electrons. So that is where at the bottom of the cloud, you have the surplus of electrons, right? And you have a distinct negative charge which develops. Whereas the particles which have lost those electrons, they will have a distinct positive charge because of the loss of electrons. Charge flows from negative to positive. So that is where you will observe that there is a kind of flow of charge. Large amount of charge flow in a very short transient amount of time. And that is what we experience as lightning. Now, in the case of lightning events, right? In the case of lightning events, 80% of the lightning events happen between the clouds itself. 20% of the lightning events happen between cloud and the ground surface. Okay, that is again something you have to keep in mind. Please understand, majority of the lightning events happen within the clouds and from one cloud to another because of the development of charge. Now, lightning means what? Very high amount of charge flow. That means very high temperature for a very short period of time. This very high temperature will lead to sudden and the violent expansion of air. Sudden and violent expansion of air. So, we were talking about the thunderstorms and the thunder. So basically that thunder is caused why? Because of the expansion, the sudden and the violent expansion of air. That is what will end up causing thunder. So here the correct answer is going to be D. That is, none of the above produces thunder. It is because of the sudden and violent expansion of air. Now after this we move to the next question. Now this is again something to do with the heating of land and water. The annual range of temperature in the interior of the continents is high as compared to the coastal areas. What is the reason, or are the reasons here? So basically, annual range of temperature, when we talk about the interior, so that means the difference between the summer temperature and the winter temperature, right? Now, in the case of thunderstorms, I hope that the portion is clear. You can, those of you who have maybe missed out due to buffering issues, take a look at the recap of it. Okay. Now, here, it is not clear in the case of thunderstorms. Thunderstorms, very simple. Understand this, that whenever you have the occurrence of thunder, why do you have thunder? Because of accumulation of charge. As the falling particles, they rub against each other, they gather the electrons and they move to the lower level of the clouds. That is when they develop the negative charge. And then the ones which have lost the electrons, so you have particles which are falling and rubbing against each other. So all the negative charge that will basically develop at the lower level. Whereas the ones which have lost the electrons, they will develop a positive charge. So you have a potential difference which develops. Always the charge will flow from negative to positive. So you will have a flow of charge somewhat like this. Now, this will produce lightning, the spark that you see. Now, 80% of the lightning occurs between the clouds themselves. 20% of the lightning is observed between the clouds and the ground surface. Now, whenever lightning occurs, for that brief milli and microsecond, the temperature goes very high. Very high temperature is attained. So the air which is present wherever the lightning is happening, let's suppose you consider the air in this region. Now in this region, the air temperature has suddenly increased from whatever the low temperature it was to hundreds of degrees Celsius within a matter of microseconds. That means there will be heating of air, and heating always leads to sudden and violent expansion of air. So that sudden and violent expansion of air, that is what you hear in the form of thunder. And what were the options which were given? Meeting of cumulonimbus clouds, right? Lightning that separates the nimbus clouds, violent upward movement of air. None of this is responsible for thunder. Thunder is caused purely as a consequence of sudden and violent expansion of air particles, right? Now, I hope this is clear in this particular case. Okay. Now, moving on to the next question. The annual range of temperature in the interior of the continent is high as compared to the coastal area. What is or are the reasons here? Now, very briefly, in simplest of the terms, what does the question want to ask from us? That when you talk about a region like Delhi, in Delhi, the summer temperature is basically around 45-48 degrees Celsius easily. Winter temperature can be 4 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius. Whereas when you talk about, let's suppose, Mumbai. Now, in the case of Mumbai, summer temperature will be roughly around 30 to 35 degrees Celsius. Winter temperature will be around 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. Right? So, variation of temperature in the coastal area is very low. Variation of temperature in the interior is very high. Why? The simple answer is water vapor. Always the simple answer is water vapor, marine influence. So why do we have marine influence? After all, it is the marine influence which leads to this factor. So what does marine influence actually translate into? So basically, thermal difference between land and water. Differential rate of heating and cooling brings about the frequent land breeze and the sea breeze on a daily basis, which leads to moderation of temperature. Whenever the land starts getting heated up, a cool sea breeze will come. It will lower the temperature. Whenever the land again, let's suppose, loses temperature, so that land and sea breeze does the role of temperature regulation. So this will generate land and sea breeze, right? That land and sea breeze will bring about moderation of temperature. It will provide moisture. Moisture is the one we have talked about, retains temperature, right? This will provide moisture. Moisture will retain temperature. Doesn't allow heat loss. In the case of moisture, heat is retained. That means day temperature is very close to night temperature. Summer temperature is very close to winter temperature. So the first statement is correct. Variation in altitude between the continents and oceans. That is not always the case. For example, in India, if you take a look at the coastline of Kerala, you have very picturesque sea cliffs in the region of Varkala, where you have the sedimentary rock sea cliffs which are there. Now, there the height of the continent and the ocean is different, but in many of the places the height is same, right? So that is not a determinant of what the coastal temperature will be, because the land and the sea breeze, they have an altitude generally up till 1 to 1.5, sometimes even 2 kilometers from the surface. So that moderates any temperature influence or the altitude influence. So this is incorrect. Presence of strong winds in the interior. Winds are much stronger in the coastal areas as compared to the interior. Why? Because of the low frictional force that the winds experience in the coastal areas as they move across the water bodies. Whereas in the interior, you have a lot of friction, due to which the winds are weaker. So again, not correct. Heavy rains in the interior as compared to the coast. This is again incorrect, right? So basically, rainfall is always greater in the coastal areas. So here the correct answer is going to be A, that is 1 only. Okay. Can't the meeting of the clouds exchange charges? Generally not, unless and until there is that meeting of clouds can lead to causation of some particles gaining charge, some particles losing charge. So will that cause thunder directly? No. That exchange of charges, Saurabh, basically will lead to lightning. Lightning will lead to thermal expansion of air, and that expansion of air will cause thunder. So thunder is always caused, why? Because of expansion of air. That is the answer. Keep that in mind. Okay. Now, moving on to the next question. Why are dewdrops not formed on cloudy nights? What is dew? Dew is when the air cools down beyond the point of saturation. In that particular case, whatever amount of surplus vapor which is there, that condenses into liquid water droplets. So that is basically the formation of dew. So here, when we talk about, let's suppose, dew formation, the air cools down beyond the point of saturation, and that is what leads to condensation. So here, in this particular case, let's suppose fall in temperature. Fall in temperature we have studied just now leads to reduction in carrying capacity. Reduction in carrying capacity. That reduction in carrying capacity will lead to what? Eventual attainment of saturation or saturated air. That saturated air, when it cools down further, means there will be condensation, isn't it? And that condensation basically accumulates on the surface in the form of dew, right? In form of dew. The temperature at which this or below which this condensation starts to happen, that is what is referred to as the dew point temperature. Okay, temperature below which the condensation starts to happen is the dew point temperature. What if this temperature at which the condensation is happening, let's assume the temperature is minus 2 degrees Celsius. Beyond that, saturation will be attained. In that case, will there be a dew formation which will happen? The answer is no. In that case, when the condensation or the dew point temperature is lower than freezing point, in that case, you experience frost formation, not dew formation. Now, so for the dew formation, we know that there is a requirement of a substantial fall in temperature. Okay, but here the question is, why is it not formed on a cloudy night? So in the case of a cloudy night, the clouds absorb the radiation released from the Earth's surface. If the clouds were to absorb the radiation, it would lead to a fall in temperature. Incorrect. Clouds reflect back the Earth's radiation. The clouds which are there, that long wave terrestrial radiation, that is reflected back. And what will that lead to? Rise in temperature. Rise in temperature is antithetical or is opposite to what leads to condensation, right? So this will never allow condensation. Condensation does not occur. Okay, so that is why the dew formation does not happen in the case of cloudy night. That is why it is also said that cloudy nights are warmer as compared to the clear sky nights, because in the case of the clear sky, you continue to lose heat endlessly and the temperature keeps on plummeting. Okay, very good. Now moving on to the next question. It is again about the global climate. Seasonal reversal of wind is a typical characteristic of equatorial, Mediterranean, monsoonal, all the above climate. This is very simple question, but mind you, even this question has been repeated twice by UPSC if you consider the past 15 years. So that tells you the topics as well as the concepts, they are repeated. So here the correct answer is C, that is monsoonal climate. Monsoon, seasonal reversal. This has been derived generally an outcome of the Arabic geographers, right? The Arab school of geography that brought in about the concept of the monsoons. In India, we have the idea about monsoonal winds written in the scripture since the Rig Vedic times itself. But it is not particularly described as a seasonal reversal. It is talking about the occurrence of rainfall. It is the Arab travelers who understood that traveling to India during the month of May, June would lead to them reaching the Indian shores faster because the winds are southwest to northeast. And then during the month of November, December, and so on, the wind direction is northeast to southwest. So that is where the term Mausim was derived at. Mausim basically means seasons, right? And from here is the term monsoon, which is arrived at. Okay, so monsoon climate is what experiences seasonal reversal of winds. Yes, Al-Masudi, beautiful. Now, climate is extreme, rainfall is scanty, and the people used to be nomadic herders. The above statement best describes which of the following regions. Climate is extreme. Here, that means large variation between the summer and the winter temperature, substantially large. Rainfall is scanty. That means either a region of a high pressure or a landlocked area where you don't experience rainfall. Landlocked and also on the leeward side of the mountains, there you won't experience rainfall. People used to be nomadic herders. Where do you find nomadic herders? Where you have the grasses, isn't it? That is where nomadic herders would be observed. Now out of this, African savanna, Central Asian steppe, North American prairie, or Siberian tundra. Now, in the case of rainfall being scanty and people being the nomadic herders, the correct answer is going to be Central Asian steppe. Here the rainfall is scanty. Why? Because in that region, the moist winds which are coming from the oceans, they have to cross the various different land areas like the mountains, right? Be it the Ural Mountains, be it the case of, let's suppose, the Himalayas, the Kunlun Shan, Tian Shan. After that, the winds will reach there. So it lies in the leeward side if you consider any of the direction. So moist winds don't reach there at all. Rainfall in this region is caused by which factor? If at all rainfall is caused, what factor leads to rainfall in that region? So that periodic rainfall which is received in these areas is because of frontogenesis, frontal formation. That causes some amount of rainfall. It is important for you, even for your map pointing, to understand these grasslands. When we talk about grasslands, they are of two types, right? Grasslands, they are of two types. One is tropical, another is temperate. These are the two types of grasslands. Tropical, example, African savanna. Okay. Then after that, you have Llanos in Venezuela, Campos in Brazil, some areas around the region of northern Karnataka, around the region of northwestern Andhra Pradesh, there also you will find some tropical grasslands. Whereas temperate, you have many of them. Steppes in the region of Central Asia, prairies in the region of North America. Then you have pampas in the region of Argentina, just to the north of Patagonian Peninsula and Patagonian Plateau, and to the south of the forested region of Gran Chaco. Then after that, you have pustas in the region of Austria-Hungary. That is where you have pustas. Then you have veld in the region of South Africa. Then after that, you have downs. Where are downs situated? In the region of Australia. And then you have Canterbury in the region of New Zealand. Right? So these are your various different temperate grasslands spread across the world. Botswana is not the case of a temperate grassland at all. Botswana largely, again, experiences some amount of savanna vegetation owing to the Okavango Delta receiving larger amount of moisture, right, in that Okavango basin. So Botswana, you will find some amount of tropical savanna which is going to be present. No temperate grasslands are present in Botswana. Okay. Now, which of the following is or are the characteristics of the tropical savanna region? Savanna region, basically long, dry, or winter season is dry, whereas the summer season, some amount of rainfall is received in the initial parts, right? So here, rainfall throughout the year? No. Then rainfall in winter only? No. Winter is dry. So tropical savanna, winter dry. It is referred to as AW type of climate. Dry winter. Okay. Extremely short dry season? No. It has got prolonged dry season. That is why in the region of the savanna, you have frequent occurrences of wildfires. So that is also incorrect. A definite dry and wet season, that is the correct answer. Okay. Now, each day is more or less the same. The morning is clear and bright with a sea breeze. As the sun climbs high in the sky, heat mounts up, dark clouds form, then rain comes with thunder and lightning. But the rain is soon over. This talks about a daily occurrence of rainfall. But which type of rainfall? Heating of the land leads to evaporation and causes thunder and lightning. So it basically is referring to daily convectional rainfall in the afternoon. Convectional rains in afternoon. Right? And that is observed where? It is observed in savanna? No. Equatorial? Yes. Okay. So that is basically the case of everyday occurrence of rainfall. Okay. I hope that is clear. Yes. 4 p.m. rains. They will always bring substantial amount of thunder and lightning. Then, and a question which is slightly associated with the portion of Indian geography. Now here again, if you observe the trend and the pattern, very important for you to understand that after 2013 onwards, UPSC has not concentrated on this to such a large extent. But before that, the concentration was very high. That tells you that maybe UPSC can revisit the impact of Enso cycles on India, impact of Madden-Julian oscillation on Indian rains, as well as the impact of Indian Ocean dipole in the case of India. Okay. Now, with reference to the Indian Ocean dipole, sometimes mentioned in the news while forecasting Indian monsoon, which of the following statements is or are correct? Now, let's assume you get confronted with one of these questions which you have not studied. How to approach this from a very layman's perspective? So if you take a look at it, Indian Ocean dipole, that means I know something to do with the Indian Ocean, isn't it? Now, mentioned in the news while forecasting monsoon, that means impact on Indian monsoon, right? Now take a look at the first statement. The IOD phenomena is characterized by a difference in the sea surface temperature between tropical Western Indian Ocean and tropical Eastern Pacific Ocean. This one word has made the entire statement incorrect. Why? Indian Ocean dipole. Difference of temperature between the Somali coastline and the Indonesian coastline. Right? Nothing to do with Eastern. Where is Eastern Pacific Ocean? In the Peruvian coastline, South American coastline. So this is absolutely incorrect. Second, IOD phenomena can influence an El Niño's impact on the monsoon. Absolutely correct. We have the cases and events, for example, in the previous century, that is in the 20th century, the most massive and the strongest Enso or El Nino phenomena was observed in the year 1998. Now, in that particular year, El Nino was supposed to be very, very strong. India was readying itself for a drought cycle. But instead, the rainfall was deficient, but almost close to normal. That is when the scientists and the climatologists, when they studied, they found out that it was a case of a positive Indian Ocean dipole. Right? So it can influence El Nino's impact on the monsoon. Now here, when you talk about IOD, the Indian Ocean dipole is the difference of temperature between the Somali coastline here and the Indonesian coastline here. Okay? It has got 3 distinct phases. The Indian Ocean dipole has got 3 distinct phases. One is positive, then you have neutral, and then you have negative. It can change on a month-to-month basis as well. Everyday reading of the ocean mean temperature is done to a particular depth in the oceans. And that everyday reading gives you an idea where the temperature is increasing. That temperature can increase because of the wind factor, evaporation factor, ocean currents, heating of the land, conduction due to the land, and many other variables as well. Now, out of these, in these 2 cases, you have a low pressure at B, low pressure at Eastern Indian Ocean. Now, when you have the low pressure at Eastern Indian Ocean, what will it do? The monsoon winds, which are generally driven like this, this is the direction of the monsoon winds. So this forms a competing low pressure. It will divert away the monsoon winds. So means low rainfall in India. Okay. Whereas positive IOD means low pressure at A. Low pressure at Western Indian Ocean. So that forms what is referred to as the supporting low pressure to the ITCZ. So don't get confused in the competing and the supporting low pressure. If you don't have that concept prior to it, don't worry. Simply think about it like a corridor, right? It is like a corridor which channelizes more winds from this mascarene high pressure towards India. It will attract more winds because it is also a low pressure. But once the winds reach there, they find that the ultimate low pressure is the ITCZ. And that is where more winds come towards the ITCZ and hence higher rains. Now this can alter the rainfall pattern which is impacted by the Enso cycles. Okay, I hope this is clear. Now, yes, ITCZ is where the two different trade winds meet. Okay, now then consider the following statements. The winds which blow between 30 north and 60 south latitudes throughout the year are known as westerlies. The moist air masses that cause winter rains in northwestern region of India are part of the westerlies. Now here, earlier we had seen one entire word was wrong. In this case, one letter is incorrect, and that is this letter. Had it been 60 north or had it been 30 south, it would have been correct. But 30 north to 60 south, is there any such wind which starts from 30 north and comes to the subtropical low pressure in the southern hemisphere? Absolutely not. So westerlies do blow between 30 north to 60 north and 30 south to 60 south, but nothing from 30 north to 60 south. This is incorrect. The moist air masses which cause winter rains which come from the west, they are the western disturbances which are dragged by two important winds, one at the surface, another one at an upper altitude. At the surface, the depression in the Mediterranean is carried by the westerlies, whereas in the upper altitude, it is carried by the subtropical westerly jet stream. So here, this portion is correct. So the correct answer in this case is going to be B, that is 2 only. Yes. Now here, if you take a look at it, this should not confuse you in terms of the wind pattern. This is basically the winds that you observe driven by the pressure belts which are generated. So this is what your doldrums, this is what are known as the doldrums because of lack of horizontal wind movement, right? This is what is known as the horse latitude. Okay. Keep in mind one thing, these two, that is this one and this one, these are your dynamic pressure zones. Whereas the doldrums, that is the equatorial low and polar high, they are thermal pressure zones. So basically that would have given you an idea from where the questions are coming from. There was another question which was asked this year about the Coriolis force, but that is largely ascribable to the rotation of the planet Earth. So we will cover it at the end about the strength of the Coriolis force, where it acts, why it acts, and so on. So in the portion of climatology, all those of you who are appearing for the examination, focus on the basic areas rather than rectifying the names of the cyclones, the names of the climate types. Basic areas of temperature, isotherm, heating of land and water, albedo, and that will drive the entire concept of permanent winds, local winds, jet streams, cyclones, cloud formation, layers of atmosphere is also to be understood. You will see all the questions have been asked from that itself. Okay. Now, after this, basically, yes, this marathon has got the questions between 2013 to 24. Then we come to the questions associated with geomorphology. Which of the following phenomena might have influenced the evolution of organisms? How does the evolution of organism happen? Evolution is impacted by varying temperature conditions as well as the varying feeding habits, which is also driven by the climate. So basically, that evolution is driven by climate, and that climate impacts feeding pattern, the food chain, right? So that is what will lead to evolution overall. So here you have to understand which of these would have led to this climate change, and that would have led to the impact on the food chain. So continental drift. Continental drift is a major event which has caused change in terms of the global climate, because when you talk about the time prior to Pangea, when you had the supercontinents in the form of Rodinia. So the supercontinent cycle, I hope we are aware of, that the planet has witnessed multiple different supercontinents earlier as well. Amongst the earlier supercontinents, you had Rodinia. Rodinia broke into multiple smaller continents. All of them, they drifted, came together, formed Pannotia. All of them again basically broke, drifted away, and eventually came together. That is what led to the formation of Pangea. Pangea has broken and has led to the present day continents and oceans that you see. This supercontinent cycle is what we also refer to in geography as the Wilson cycle, right? Given by Tuzo-Wilson, who is also attributed with the theory of plate tectonics. The name of plate tectonic, that is also attributed to Tuzo-Wilson. So continental drift, during the time of Pangea, much of the supercontinent that Pangea was actually a desert. That had led to the development of the desert-based species. Many of the present-day lizards and the reptiles that you see, they developed harder scales during the time of Pangea. Because Pangea was a larger supercontinent surrounded by Panthalassa, and that means rainfall was restricted only across the coastal areas. The central portions were largely deserts, and that is when the reptilian species, they started dominating. They could adapt to it easier. And one of those reptilians, they developed into dinosaurs, which changed the course of the planet Earth, the evolution of the species and the cycles as well. Then you have the glacial cycle. Every few thousand years, the planet enters into a phase of freezing. That is what is referred to as an ice age. And again, after a few thousand years, that ice starts to melt. That is what is referred to as the interglacial period. During the last ice age, for example, you had the region of Asia, which was connected from the region of the Bering Strait today. It was connected by a land bridge with North America. And that allowed for human migration, animal migration from the region of Asia all the way to the Americas. And then after the ice age, the ice melted and you had water in between them. So that has also impacted evolution. Example, you can take the case of the Sumatran rhinos, the Sumatran tiger, the Sumatran elephants. All of these, they had migrated to the region of Sumatra, which was connected to the Malayan Peninsula when the sea levels were lower during the ice age. And then when the sea levels rose, there was water which came in between, and hence the Sumatran elephants are amongst the few elephants that you will find in tropical rainforest. They are smaller as compared to Asian and the African elephant. Sumatran rhinos, they are also smaller as compared to the one-horned rhinos that we see. So this has led to evolution. So why do we observe these glacial cycles, by the way? What is the reason of the glacial cycles? The reason is basically the Milankovitch cycle. That is, every few thousand years, the planet's orbit changes from being circular to being elliptical. Why? Because of the influence of the gravitational pull of Jupiter. So that means the planet goes very far away from the sun. That brings about more cooling. Again, the planet follows a kind of a circular orbit. That again basically brings greater heating. Presently, we are in the more circular orbit as compared to the history of planet Earth. This happens every 1 lakh years. Then there's a change of axial tilt also. So that is basically a part of the Milankovitch cycle, as it is known as, which brings about these different ice ages. Okay, so all this, they bring about a change in temperature. So here, that changes the evolutionary cycles. Okay, I hope this is understood. Now, plate tectonic movement is steady event while climate catastrophic rising sea levels process. That is basically plate tectonic movement. See, that also goes through multiple cycles of activation and again a kind of dormancy. Presently, we are in the stage of dormancy. Around 250 million years ago, you had a violent spate of plate tectonics, which created one of the phases of mass extinction, where the convection current in the interior of the planet Earth was supercharged, due to which the volcanic eruption suddenly increases. Again, around 95 million years ago, when you had the eruption which led to the formation of the Deccan Traps and the Caribbean islands, there again you had extraordinary plate movement which happened. The speed of the Indian plate moving northwards accelerated to almost 15 to 20 centimeter per year. That increased the carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere, and that brought about greater warming. So this plate tectonic, that plate tectonic movement and the associated volcanicity, that is always attributable to the change in the temperature. In fact, around 95 million years ago, when you had that sudden spate of volcanism, that is when the largest of the predators of the ocean, they went extinct. So obviously impacting evolution as well. Why desert in the central part of Pangaea? Because of the impact of the rain shadow zone. When you compare the coastal area of India as compared to, let's suppose, a central Madhya Pradesh, or as compared to eastern part of Maharashtra, Vidarbha region, central Madhya Pradesh, they will receive less rainfall because most of the rainfall is attained only in the coastline. Isn't it? So here, when you talk about one large supercontinent, imagine many different hills and mountains would have already been present. So they would never have allowed the moisture to be carried deeper inland, hence dry. Okay? Now, is it necessary to remember the geological periods? Absolutely no. For GS in geography, UPSC is not asking you about the Cambrian, Precambrian, Carboniferous, Eocene. That is not being asked in GS. But slight idea about the geological time scale, just a slight idea is okay, but please don't go for the ratification. Neither should you start to ratify the rock structures, the Archean, Harvadian, Aryan, Purana rock structures. Many of the students go for that. Don't ratify that. Not required for your GS. Okay? Now, here, consider the following statements. The Earth's magnetic field has reversed every few 100,000 years. That is true. Because of the movement of the inner core, or rather the outer liquid core, which consists of an abundance of iron and nickel, there has been a frequent change in the Earth's magnetic field ever since the time of evolution of planet 4.5 billion years ago. When the Earth was created more than 4,000 million years ago, there was 54% oxygen and no carbon dioxide. Let's hold on to that. When living organisms originated, they modified the early atmosphere of planet Earth. Now here, understand, this talks about the evolutionary cycle of planet Earth. So evolutionary cycle of planet Earth also involves evolution of the atmosphere. Evolution of atmosphere basically has got three different stages. One is the primitive atmosphere, which was present around 4 billion years ago when the planet was just formed. At this point of time, which were the gases which were present at this point of time? The atmosphere consisted of hydrogen and helium. That was dominant, right, in the primordial atmosphere. Then the planet went through a stage of degasification, where almost around 3.8 to 3.5 billion years ago, you had excessive amount of volcanic eruptions happening from every different place. That led to introduction of new gases. In this introduction of new gases, certain gases were introduced. Which were those? You basically had ammonia, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and the most important gas, that was water vapor. At this stage also, oxygen was not dominant. Then, roughly around 400 to 450 million years ago, you had the evolution of the plant species. Now, those plant species, they started consuming the excess CO2, and that is when enrichment, consumption of CO2 and addition of oxygen started to happen. So oxygen was the latest entrant, and as soon as oxygen started dominating in the atmosphere, that is when the species started to grow larger, because now they could carry out metabolism easily. So when the earth was created more than 4 billion years ago, there was 54% oxygen? No. When living organisms originated, they modified the early atmosphere of the planet Earth? Absolutely yes. So here the correct answer is C, that is 1 and 3 only. Okay. Now, after that, we come to the next question. This is basically a very simple and a basic question. Consider the following: electromagnetic radiation, geothermal energy, gravitational force, plate movement, rotation of the earth, and revolution also of the earth. Which of the above are responsible for bringing dynamic changes to the surface of the earth? Now, why do we experience changes to the surface of the earth? Changes to the surface of the earth are basically brought about by a mixture of endogenic and exogenic forces. Right? Exogenic forces, they are also, that is acting from exterior, they are known as levelers. Whatever the earth creates from interior, exogenic force will flatten it. A mountain will be flattened. Aravallis, at one point of time, so tall that you had glaciers originating. Look at Aravallis now. But endogenic, they keep on creating, building forces. So they are also known as tectonic forces. Now, if you take a look at each one of them, electromagnetic radiation. Now that will end up influencing the rate of heating and cooling, won't it? That influence on rate of heating and cooling will bring about an impact on the rainfall. That rainfall will bring about an impact on weathering and the rate of erosion. That will impact the surface. Geothermal energy, the heat from the interior, will lead to maybe subsidence of the land, elevation of the land, any of those. For example, Colorado Plateau. So I'm just giving you the example of how heat from the interior can lead to swelling up, right? At the same time, heat from the interior can lead to subsidence as well. Gravitational force, that will also be responsible for the clouds which are present, the water vapor present closer to the surface, and hence contributing to exogenic force, plate movement, similarly rotation and revolution. So all of these are basically responsible for bringing about the dynamic changes. I hope this is being understood. Nobody has got any doubts. If you have doubts, please do not hesitate. Now, another a very straightforward and a direct question. Consider the following. This was asked 2024 itself. Pyroclastic debris, ash and dust, nitrogen compounds, sulfur compounds. How many of the above are the product of volcanic eruptions? So volcanic eruptions, they end up creating various different types of emissions. So here again, pyroclastic debris, ash and dust, nitrogen, sulfur compounds, vapor, carbon dioxide, they are also released. Water vapor is amongst the dominant gases which is released during volcanic eruption. That is why the cloud formation is so very thick, and that is what causes endless number of thunder and lightning events in the region of a volcanic eruption. Okay. Now, Consider the following statements. Again, a question of 2024. This is a 3-statement question. So, rainfall is one of the reasons for the weathering of the rocks. We have talked about it. Yes, it is. Then statement 2. So, statement 1 is correct. Rainwater contains carbon dioxide in the solution form. So rainwater, basically, when the rainfall is actually falling on the surface, at that point of time, carbon dioxide is dissolved to form a weak or a dilute carbonic acid. Carbonic acid. Right? That also leads to weathering when it will fall on the rock surface, depending upon the type of the rock. For example, if you have calcium, it can dissolve that calcium-based rocks, right? So depending upon the kind of material that you have, there will be dissolution and eventual leading to chemical weathering as well. Rainwater contains atmospheric oxygen. If the rainwater is able to dissolve CO2, which is much lesser in amount as compared to oxygen, it will also be able to dissolve oxygen. That causes oxidation of the rocks as well, right? So here, which of the following is correct in respect of the above statement? So here, both statement 2 and statement 3 are correct, and both of them end up explaining statement 1. So A is the correct answer in this particular case. Okay. Now, consider the following statements. In a seismograph, P waves are recorded earlier than S waves. In P waves, the individual particles vibrate to and fro in the direction of the wave propagation, whereas in S waves, the particles vibrate up and down at right angles to the direction of the wave propagation. So this is about seismograph or occurrence of seismicity. So when you take a look at P waves and S waves, a simple difference. P waves, basically there is a kind of a wave motion somewhat like this. Compression, expansion, like that the wave will propagate. So that means in the case of P waves, direction, and listen to this very carefully, the direction of wave movement is same as the direction of the particle movement. Wave is also moving in this direction. Particles are also oscillating in the same direction. That means propagation of wave or the wave speed will be much higher. Speed is higher. And also that will mean, be it a liquid medium, be it a gaseous medium. If gaseous medium, let's suppose particles are far away, but one particle is moving in the path of the other particle naturally will be disturbed. That will disturb the third particle. So it moves through solids, liquids, as well as gas. Whereas S waves, the movement of the particle is perpendicular, right? Let's suppose here you consider the particles. So the particles will be moving in a sinusoidal manner. This is the direction of the wave propagation. But the particles are moving like what? Perpendicular to it. Right? So that is where the wave speed will be slower because the disturbance is taking time to propagate. So this is having slow speed. And that also means if the speed is slow, its ability to impact the other particle, let's suppose in the case of a liquid or gas, will also be limited. So it won't be able to move through liquid or gaseous medium. Right? Generally, the relation is that S waves is around 1.7 times slower as compared to P waves. P waves are faster, almost around 1.7 times. All the associated P waves, P star S, P star G, all the various different associated P waves, they are faster than the associated S waves. So in the seismographs, P waves are recorded earlier. Why? Because they are faster. And that is what is a property which is utilized to make the early warning earthquake detectors, right? Where the alarm or the siren goes off much before the actual impact does happen. Around 30 seconds to 2 minutes is the time difference between the P wave striking and the combined action of the S waves also striking and leading to the generation of surface waves. In P waves, the individual particles vibrate to and fro. Correct. So here, which of the statements given above are correct? Both 1 and 2, both of them are correct. Right? Now, then we come to the questions which have been asked from oceanography. So consider the following statements. In the tropical zone, western section of the oceans are warmer than the eastern sections due to the influence of the trade winds. In the temperate zone, however, westerlies make the eastern section of the oceans warmer as compared to the western section. So this is the concept which has to do with the concept of upwelling and downwelling. So let's consider two basic regions or the factors. Let's suppose you have these continents and this is the ocean, right? Now, if you have wind which is moving like this, offshore wind, it will carry the surface water away. But as the surface water is carried away, that does not lead to a lowering of the water level. In fact, the subsurface water will be drawn to the surface, isn't it? So here, there is an upward movement of water. That means there will be low temperature, lower temperature, isn't it? Whereas, when these winds, let's suppose they move like this, all the surface water, which is the warmest water, they will start piling up and the water eventually will be pushed down here. So piling up of warm water will happen. So that is due to downwelling. That will lead to higher temperature, isn't it? So basically, you have a high temperature and a low temperature. So wherever you have onshore winds will lead to downwelling. And that downwelling will lead to high temperature. Wherever you have the offshore winds, away from the shore, away from the coast, that will lead to upwelling. And that will lead to lower temperature. Temperature will reduce. Right? Now, if you take a look at the question talks about lower latitude and the higher latitude. In the lower latitude, what do you have? That is the tropical section. In the tropical section, if you consider the two land areas, you have the trade winds. The trade winds move in this direction. So there will be downwelling in which part? In the western section of the ocean, there will be downwelling. So western section of the oceans are warmer. Correct. Whereas in the temperate zone, you have the westerlies. So downwelling will happen in the eastern section of the ocean. So eastern sections of the oceans are warmer. So that is basically correct in this case. So here, which of them is or are correct? Both 1 and 2 are correct. Okay. Now, then in the South Atlantic and Southeastern Pacific regions in tropical latitudes, cyclones do not originate. What are the reasons for no origin of the tropical cyclones? Obviously, it is tropical latitude, so you will have tropical cyclones. Why don't you have tropical cyclones in Southern Pacific and Southern Atlantic? That is primarily because for the formation of tropical cyclones, first of all, they will never happen at equator. They will happen some distance away from the equator where there is Coriolis force. Coriolis force is a must for cyclonic circulation. After all, you will never have the circular motion of air without Coriolis force. Now, here, why don't you have that event in the Southern Pacific or the Southern Atlantic? Because in these regions, for the formation of tropical cyclone, another condition is a pre-existing low pressure belt. Low pressure, which is not the case in the Southern Pacific or the Southern Atlantic. Why? Because the ITCZ seldom moves over the central Southern Pacific and central Southern Atlantic. So this is why you don't have the development of tropical cyclone. Okay? So the answer is B. Then Tides occur, this is a very simple question, tides occur in the oceans and seas due to which of the following? Gravitational force of the sun, gravitational force of the moon, and centrifugal force of the earth. So basically, when we talk about the gravitational force of the sun creates a solar bulge. Gravitational force of the moon will create a lunar bulge, right? Both of them will create a bulge in the region. And then the centrifugal force as the planet rotates and revolves around the sun, that helps in developing of the counter bulge as well. So here, all the three are responsible for the tidal occurrences which occur. Okay? Now, after this, the most important fishing grounds in the world. Again, this is a question which has been repeated twice. The most important fishing grounds of the world are found in the regions where warm and cold ocean atmospheric currents meet. Rivers drain out large amounts of fresh water into the sea. Warm and cold ocean currents meet. Continental shelf is undulating. So here it is very simple. Basically, you have warm and cold oceanic currents which end up meeting, right? You have three such prominent zones across the planet. Out of that, which are the three prominent zones where you have the meeting of the warm and the cold ocean currents? And which are those ocean currents? First is, and the most important is, meeting of Gulf Stream and Labrador Current. Northwestern Atlantic. Very rich fishing ground. Then you have the meeting of Kuroshio and Oyashi Current in the region of Northwestern Pacific. Another rich fishing ground. Another one, you have the case of Brazil Current, which is a warm water current, and Falkland Current, which is a weak current. That is why it is not very strong. So this is the strongest. Now what happens when the warm and the cold currents meet? They will end up creating an oxygen-rich water. The amount of dissolved oxygen increases, due to which the spawning rate increases, particularly amongst the plankton species. And that is what leads to abundance in the entirety of the food chain, which ends up benefiting many of the species. So this ends up also creating, in terms of environment ecology, a kind of an ecotone, right? Where you have a transition between two different ecosystems, warm water ecosystem, cold water ecosystem. So that ecotone will have its own unique kind of species. Cold water species also sometimes come to lay eggs in the warm water or in that mixed water. Warm water species will also come in that mixed water to lay eggs, and hence the population increases. So the concept of ecotone that you would have studied in environment ecology fits in this particular case. Yes, the edge effect. Beautiful. Now, what explains the eastward flow of the equatorial counter current? The equatorial counter current, which is permanently present in the equatorial Atlantic and the equatorial Pacific, but in the case of Indian Ocean, you only have a seasonal equatorial counter current. Why do you have that? That is basically because of you have the north equatorial current, the south equatorial current. Both of them, they move in the direction of east to west, right? Carried by the trade winds. And that leads to the accumulation of water here, and there will be some flow back, aided by the equatorial westerlies also, which will be generated. So that is because of the convergence of the two different equatorial currents which are there. So the answer in this case is B. Now, again a question which is repeated. On the planet Earth, most of the fresh water exists as ice caps and glaciers. Out of the remaining fresh water, the largest proportion exists where? Is bound in atmosphere as moisture and clouds, is found in freshwater lakes and rivers, exists as groundwater, exists as soil moisture. So in this, the answer is exists as groundwater. Because if you take a look at the distribution, water distribution across the planet of Earth, 97.5% is the saline water, right? 2.5% is your fresh water. But even out of that 2.5%, whatever that is, around 70% is trapped in the case of ice caps and glaciers. Around 30% is trapped in the form of groundwater. It is in the remaining 0.4% where you have rivers, lakes, soil moisture, atmospheric vapor, all of that is in that remaining 0.4%. So the answer will be exists as groundwater. This was also asked again in the year 2021. Just to tell you which are the portions which are frequently repeated: ocean currents, the mixing of the ocean currents, and so on. With reference to the water on the planet Earth, consider the following statements. Amount of water in the rivers and lakes is more than the amount of groundwater. We have just seen it is incorrect. The amount of water in polar ice caps and glaciers is more than the amount of groundwater. This is correct, 70% to 30%. So which of them are correct? The answer is B, that is 2 only. Now let us move to the portion of Indian geography where physiography, questions associated with drainage, most of the important questions we are going to cover, some of the minor questions which let's suppose are associated with that year's immediate current affairs, that is something we are not covering, but most of the aspect associated with the physiography, with the drainage, agriculture, vegetation also we will cover, minerals, that is to be covered here, right? Now, here, which of the following is the best example of repeated falls in sea level giving rise to the present day extensive marshland? Bhitarkanika, then Marakkanam, then Naupada swamp, and then Run of Kutch. Which of these is the best example of repeated falls in sea level? So the answer is Run of Kutch. If you take a look at the region of Kutch, it was not always associated, or basically it was not always fitted to the Indian mainland. The region thereby was a kind of an island where you had riverine deposits. Multiple larger rivers at one point of time would be originating from the region of Aravallis. Now they would deposit the amount of alluvium, right? And then you had this interglacial period due to which you had multiple rise and fall in sea level. And also, mind you, this is the region, the Run of Kutch region, that is at the boundary zone of 3 different plates. Which are those plates? The Indian plate, Eurasian plate, and the Arabian plate, which makes it very sensitive seismically. Lot of frequent earthquakes have happened even historically in the region. For example, the Kutch earthquake in the 1810s, that is one of the recent example which led to a seismic adjustment of the rocks, due to which a large land area emerged above water, and at the same time some portion went underwater. Now, due to this rise of the land, fall in the sea level, fall in land, rise in sea level, this has been repeated so many times. There has been a shallow area which was created where the water evaporated, leaving behind large salt pans where you find arid soil and rich deposit of salt. That is the region of the Run of Kutch. Okay, I hope this is clear. Now, consider the following statement. Amarkantak Hills are at the confluence of Vindhya and the Sahyadri ranges. Then, Biligiri Rangan Hills constitute the easternmost part of the Satpura range. Shesh Chalam Hills constitute the southernmost part of the Western Ghats. Very, very simple question if you just know where they are located. Amarkantak. Amarkantak is present where? Amarkantak will be present in this region. That is where you have the radial drainage pattern around the region of Amarkantak, where from one end you have Narmada, another you have Son, which originate, right? The region of Amarkantak. Confluence of Vindhyas and Sahyadri. Sahyadri is what? Sahyadri is the Western Ghats, right? So Vindhyas and Sahyadris, will they ever end up meeting here? Absolutely no. First statement is incorrect. Then Biligiri Rangan Hills, where are they situated, by the way? You have the BTR, that is the Tiger Reserve also. That is situated in the heart of the Western Ghats in the state of Karnataka. So they constitute the easternmost part of Satpura. Satpura range. The eastern part is Mahadev Hills. Karnataka, very far away. Sheshachalam Hills, they end up constituting the southernmost part of the Western Ghats. Sheshachalam Hills, where are they present? Andhra Pradesh, where you have the very famous, the growth of red sanders. The movie has made it famous. So that is present in the region of Eastern Ghats. Southernmost part of Western Ghats? Incorrect. So the correct answer here is D. That is none of the above. Right? Now, consider the following pairs, port and what is it well known as. Now, please understand one thing, why this question was asked and why there is a chance of another question associated with ports which can be asked. In the year 2023, 2024 and even today, you had multiple different news stories associated with Virinium Port, right? Which is going to be one of the most pivotal and the most important ports that India has developed in recent times. It is in the state of Kerala around Thiruvananthapuram. So that is going to completely, in a way, upstage the mobility of the ships and the transshipment which happens in the region of South Asia. So that is why, and because of the protests associated with the construction of the Virinium port, ports became important. This year again, you have that importance provided to Great Nicobar as well as Virinium. So keep that in mind. Kamarajar Port, first major port in India registered as a company. Correct or incorrect? What do you think when we talk about the region of Kamarajar Port? So Kamarajar Port basically is the first port which is registered under the Companies Act. The other ones, the major ports, they are under the Port Trust Act. So here the first statement is correct. Then Mundra Port, largest privately owned port in India. This is also correct. Then Visakhapatnam Port, largest container port in India. No. Which is the largest container port in India? The largest container port is basically JNPT. Beautiful. So here the correct answer is B, that is only two pairs. Always advisable to look at the major ports. Do it in a chronological, do it from west to east or east to west, whatever suits the normal logic. Please understand, eastern ports or eastern coast is not suited for the port construction other than the geographical location around Visakhapatnam and Tuticorin or Thoothukudi. That is where you have some amount of deep water which is present. Western side, because the western coast is a submergent coast, you have the natural availability of deeper waters. That is where naturally ports and harbors are situated. So here, this is the Kandla port, right? Then Mumbai, then JNPT, that is Nhava Sheva, and then JNPT. Then you have Panji, Marmagaon, then you have Mangalore, then you have Kochi, then you have Tuticorin. This is where the Virinium port is being constructed. Chennai, the Ennore port or the Kamarajar port, then Visakhapatnam, Paradeep and Haldia. The northernmost major port of the country is the Kandla or the Deen Dayal Port Trust. Okay. Now consider the following pairs in terms of the peak and where they are situated. So Namcha Barwa, Garhwal Himalaya, Nanda Devi, Kumaon Himalaya, Nokrek, Sikkim Himalaya. Which of the pairs are correctly matched? Namcha Barwa is present where? In the region of Arunachal Himalayas, slightly to the north of Arunachal. So Garhwal Kumaon, Kumaon Garhwal is in the region of Uttarakhand. So this is incorrect. Nanda Devi, that is present in the region of Kumaon. Correct. Nokrek, Where is Nokrek present? Nokrek is a peak present in the region of Meghalaya, right? As a part of the Garo Khasi Jayantia. This is not a part of the Sikkim Himalaya. And by the way, the Meghalayan highland or the Meghalayan plateau where you have Nokrek, that is not considered to be a part of Himalayas, but rather considered to be a part of Peninsular Plateau, right? So here, this is incorrect. So which of them are correctly matched? B, 2 only, that is the correct one. Yes, the Karbi Anglong Plateau, beautiful. Now, Siachen Glacier is situated east of Aksai Chin, east of Leh, north of Gilgit, north of Nubra Valley. Now, observe this particular map if you can, if you have little clue about this. So basically, this is the region of Aksai Chin. Okay, this is the map of Jammu and Kashmir. This is the region of Aksai Chin. Then after that, here to the east of Aksai Chin is the region of Tibet, right? Then to the east of Leh, Leh is also situated here. Where is Siachen? Siachen is this place. Very close to DBO sector, the Daulat Beg Oldie, the highest airfield where any of the air forces, they tend to operate. Highest airfield in India is the DBO sector. Then to the north of Siachen, you have the Shaksgam Valley. Here you have Gilgit. To the north of Gilgit is Siachen present? No. So these three statements automatically become incorrect. North of the Nubra Valley is where you will find the Siachen Glacier. Okay? Now, then, black cotton soil of India has been formed due to the weathering off. So basically, brown forest soil, fissure volcanic rock, granite and schist, shale and limestone. So basically, when you take a look at this, how is it that the black cotton soil has been formed? Black cotton soil has been formed in the region of the Deccan Traps due to a fissure volcanic eruption. As the Indian plate was moving over the region of Reunion Islands, there was that fissure eruption which created the entire region of Deccan Traps. So the fissure volcanic rocks, which are basaltic in nature, being basaltic in nature, if you know the chemical composition of the basaltic rocks, they are mafic, right? Mafic kind rocks. So rich in the titanoferous compounds, which basically provides that unique black color. They have greater amount of water retention capability, which is associated with the growth of rain-fed cotton cultivation as well. Okay? Now, after this, we come to the next question. Consider the following statements. Barren Island volcano is an active volcano located in the Indian territory, right? Barren Island lies about 140 kilometers to the east of Great Nicobar. The last time Barren Island volcano erupted was in 1991 and it has remained inactive ever since then. So when we say Barren Island volcano, that Barren Island volcano, is it an active volcano? Yes, the only active volcano which is present. It is the northernmost active volcano in the entire Indonesian arc where there is a convergence of the Indian plate. So this is correct. Barren Island lies 140 kilometers to the east of Great Nicobar. If you take a look at the location, this is where Barren Islands is situated, right? This is where Great Nicobar is situated. So it lies to the east of Andamans. Okay. Now, basically, when we talk about this Barren Islands, here, the third statement is the one which gives you the answer by elimination. The last time the Barren Island volcano erupted was in 1991 and it has remained inactive ever since then. The answer is no. When was the last eruption of Barren Islands observed? Around 2017. It was not a massive eruption, but an eruption nonetheless. Before that, a major eruption in 1994. So, After 1991, there have been multiple eruptions. So 3 in itself, you know that 3 is incorrect. Eliminate 3. Automatically 2 will also be eliminated and you will be left with the correct answer, that is 1 only. Okay? Now, after this, the next question. Consider the following statements. In India, Himalayas are spread over 5 states only. The Western Ghats are spread over 5 states only. Pulicat Lake is spread over 2 states only. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? Think about it. So when you talk about the Himalayas, now this was a question asked in 2017. Jammu Kashmir was considered to be a state at that point of time, right? So at that point of time, if you consider the stretch of the Himalayas, Jammu Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, the region of Assam, then you have the eastern Himalayas in the region of Manipur, some areas of the Purvanchal furthermore. So you had the Himalayas extending beyond the 5 states. So the first statement is incorrect. Then the Western Ghats. Where are the Western Ghats situated? From this region all the way till here, along with the region of Tamil Nadu. So you have Kerala, Maharashtra, then Goa, Karnataka, then Gujarat in the north and Tamil Nadu. So Western Ghats are present in 6 states, not in 5 states. 1 and 2 you know you have eliminated. You automatically have the correct answer, that is B. Pulicat Lake is present and is shared between which particular states? When we talk about the case of Pulicat Lake, it is basically in the region of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. Beautiful. So here, this is the correct answer. So Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. Okay. Now, which of the following is geographically closest to the region of Great Nicobar? The southernmost extent of the Andaman Nicobar Island. Which of them is closest? Sumatra, Borneo, Java, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is quite far, right? But nonetheless, we might get confused in terms of where Borneo is, where Java is, where Sumatra is. So take a look at the map. Sumatra, this end is what is closest to the region of Great Nicobar. Then you have Java, Borneo, then shares, that is the island which also has some territory of Malaysia. This is the Malayan Peninsula. Here you will have the very important choke point in the form of the Malacca Strait, right? Then you have the Sulawesi and the West Papua. So that is basically the distribution in general, right? So here, which of the following is geographically closest to Great Nicobar? Answer is Sumatra. Okay, I hope this is understood. Now, one of the simplest questions, if you can think about it, that UPSC has ever asked, other than the rotation and revolution of the planet Earth, is this question. Which of the following pairs of the states of India indicates the easternmost and the westernmost states? If you do mistake in this question, well, after that, you need certain other type of remedies in geography as well. So easternmost and westernmost states, which are those? You have Arunachal Pradesh and Gujarat. I don't think any explanation is required, any kind of help is required in particular question like this. Okay. Now, consider the following pairs: Cardamom Hills, Coromandel Coast; Kaimur Hills, Konkan Coast; Mahadev Hills, Central India; and Mikir Hills in the Northeast India. Now here, Cardamom Hills, where are they situated? This is where you have the Cardamom Hills which are situated. This is your Coromandel coastline. So incorrectly matched. Kaimur Hills, where are they situated? This is where you have the Kaimur Hills, around the region of the Rohtas upland and the extension of the eastern part of Vindhyas. So this is also Konkan coast. Wait, what is the Konkan coast? This is your Konkan coast, right? So this is also incorrectly matched. Mahadev Hills. When you talk about Mahadev Hills, that is located in central India, right? So this is correct. Mikir Hills, Mikir and Bareil ranges are situated here. So that is Northeast India. It is correct. So which of the above pairs is or are correctly matched? So you have 3 and 4 which are correctly matched. Okay. Now then, which one of the following pairs of islands is separated from each other by the 10-degree channel? Now 10-degree channel, named after the 10-degree latitude, that ends up separating the region of Andaman group of islands with Nicobar group of islands. So here the correct answer is going to be Andaman and Nicobar. Okay. Then in India, the problem of soil erosion is associated with which of the following? Terrace cultivation, deforestation, or tropical climate. Which of them is leading to soil erosion in India? Now, terrace cultivation. Terrace cultivation is what? If you have a slope, you have basically converted the slope into flat terraces for cultivation, water retention, and also prevention of soil erosion, not the reason for soil erosion. Incorrect. Eliminate one. You automatically have the correct answer. But nonetheless, deforestation, removal of the binding vegetation from the topsoil, will cause lot of erosion. So this is correct. And then tropical climate. That has got nothing to do, because if you have vegetation in an area, regardless of tropical climate, it won't lead to soil erosion. So this is also incorrect. So the correct answer in this case is going to be B. Okay. Now, then contour bunding. What is contour bunding? Is a method of soil conservation which is used in desert margins liable to strong wind action, low flat plains close to stream courses liable to flooding, scrublands liable to spread of weed growth, none of the above. What is contour bunding in terms of the soil conservation? So understand this. Is it B? Okay. Understand what is contour bunding. What is contour? Break this down. Contour is a sinuous line, a kind of a linear pattern. And bunding is what? Creation of artificial physical barriers or bunds. That is bunding. So let's suppose you have a sloping region. Now, whenever you have rainfall which occurs in that area, all that water tends to accumulate and flows down with a kind of a force. That movement with the force, that is enough to carry the topsoil away with it. So that is basically what leads to soil erosion. So how is this soil erosion then prevented? So in these regions of slope, if you consider, let's suppose this region of a slope. Now, what do? You construct these physical barriers. How do the physical barriers look from the front side? So if you consider this to be a hilly area, the physical barriers are constructed somewhat like this. Now what it does, if it rains in this case, water will start flowing. Many of the times before these bunds, immediately in front of these bunds, ditches are also dug. Right? In a linear pattern, ditches are dug. So what does it lead to? All the water which flows will accumulate first of all in the ditch, right? Then it will accumulate here. You have stopped the speed of flow, and then slowly it will move. Speed has reduced. Again, it will accumulate here, and then again it will move like this. So like this, the speed of flow reduces. Why is that important? Because we know that in the case of erosion or in the case of any kind of gradational movement, you have the carrying capacity of the agent of nature. That carrying capacity here is proportional to speed. If the speed is high, greater amount of materials will be carried. If the speed is low, they won't be able to carry enough material. So erosion will be less. So as the speed is low, carrying capacity will be low. Now take a look at the question. Contour bunding is a method of soil conservation used in sloping areas, hilly areas. Is that the case in any of the options? The answer is no. So the answer in this case will be D, that is none of the above. Okay? Now, which of the following statements regarding laterite soils of India are correct? Laterite soil, they are generally red in color. Yes, they are, because of the presence of some amount of iron. Iron concentrates which are there, that is what creates that red color. So 1 is correct. Can't we say the Green Wall Initiative for preventing further desertification is a method? No, it is not contour bunding. It is not a bund. Bund is basically where you create a kind of, with the help of mud, stones, etc., you create a physical barrier. There you are creating a barrier with the help of the kind of trees, right? So that is different in order to prevent the further desertification. That is different in that case. Now, they are rich in nitrogen and potash. Incorrect. None of the soils, almost in general, understand this as a common pattern. When you talk about soils, soils are always going to be poor in the case of nitrogen amount. Why? Because the rocks, they don't have enough nitrogen. Why? Because the nitrogen which is present in the atmosphere is found in the form of N2. That is the triple bond of nitrogen. So that makes it almost inert in nature, non-reactive in terms of its nature. So when it is non-reactive, so it will not be reacting with the rocks, not be able to form any of the nitrates, and hence, because the rocks don't have nitrates, the weathering of the rocks, the disintegration of the rocks which leads to soil formation, they also won't have nitrates. So they are poor in nitrogen, almost all the soil. So this is incorrect. Now here also you can use the method of elimination. Eliminate 2. You get the correct answer. But nonetheless, they are well developed in the region of Rajasthan and UP. No. In the northern part of India, some portions in the foothills of the Aravalis, that is in the region to the southwest of Delhi, some parts of Rajasthan, some portions of Bihar, that is where you will find laterite, but mostly you will find it in the region of Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, parts of Tamil Nadu, where soil conservation techniques have been used for tea and coffee plantation, at the same time used for growing cashew nuts, tapioca, and the other kind of crops. Tapioca and cashew nuts grow well on the soil. This is correct. So here the correct answer is C, that is 1 and 4. But only with soil conservation will you be able to grow these type of soil. Which climatic condition is associated with the laterite soil? This is the soil distribution. Which kind of climatic condition is associated? Again, a distinct dry and wet season. A very intense rainfall season followed by a prolonged dry season, that will mostly lead to formation of laterite soil. Okay, so alternate and a distinctive wet and dry season. Okay, that is vital for this. So laterite soil pockets in certain areas in the region here you will find here around the Western Ghats because of the excess rainfall which causes leaching and draining away of the nutrients. Then in this region and some portions of Tamil Nadu, in these pockets also you will find. Andhra Pradesh also you will find. Okay. Now here the river Narmada. Narmada river flows to the west while most other large peninsular rivers drain to the east. Why? So it occupies a linear rift valley. It flows between the Vindhyas and the Satpuras. The land slopes to the west from central India. Why is it that the river Narmada drains to the east? If you think about it, look at the question and look at basically the options here. Understand, you have to reply what the question is asking, not what you know, because that will lead to mistakes in this. So, does the river Narmada flow to the west because it is lying between the Vindhyas and the Satpura? That is why it is flowing to the west? No. Does it flow to the west because the land slopes to the west from central India? We know the slope of the land is to the east. That is why we have the east flowing rivers. It flows to the west because it occupies a linear rift valley. Okay, so it occupies a linear rift valley. That is why you will find Narmada drains to the west. Yeah. Okay, that rift valley exists between the Vindhyas and the Satpuras, which are the block formations which have happened due to the upliftment of the Horst fault which has been created. So the answer in this case, please don't get confused in this or don't have any kind of hesitation. It is simple, clear cut. Why it drains to the west is purely because of the rift valley. Now, with reference to the Himalayan rivers joining the Ganga downstream of Prayagraj from west to east, which one of the following sequences is correct? Ghagra, Gomti, Gandak, Kosi. Gomti, Ghagra, Gandak, Kosi. So, which of this order is correct? So, if we take a look at it, when we talk about all these are the left bank tributaries of river Ganga. Now here, the left bank tributaries of river Ganga, the earliest one is the region of Ram Ganga, originating near Pilibhit. Then you have Gomti, which moves through the capital city of Lucknow. Okay. And then after that, Ghagra, which joins river Ganga in the region of Bihar. Then you have Gandak. Then you have Kosi. Here you have another one forming a tributary and forming the boundary between Bihar and Bengal. That is river Mahananda. That is, these are the tributaries, the left bank important tributaries. So, Gomti, Ghagra, Gandak and Kosi, right? Answer will be B in this particular case. You would have heard about the news story of Kosi-Mechi interlink. River Mechi, which is a tributary of Mahananda, that is present here. Okay, Kosi-Mechi interlink is also in news. It has received in principle approval. So that Mechi will get water from river Kosi. Mechi will provide water to Mahananda. That will provide water to the northeastern, very in a way poor and drought prone region of northeastern Bihar. Okay. Now consider the following information: waterfall, region and the river. Dhuandhar Falls, Malwa, river Narmada. Hundru Falls, Chota Nagpur, river Subarnarekha. Garsopa Falls or Jog Falls, Western Ghats in the river Netravati. So what is this, or which of them are correctly matched? Dharani, is there any way to remember the tributaries of the important rivers? There is only one way that you should follow rather than going for any mnemonics, repetition and simple repetition in terms of you have the 7 major river systems and other than that the places in use, right? So the places in use, the videos that we are doing on YouTube, that should be sufficient. Other than that, just list out those 7 major rivers and their major tributaries. That is Indus, the Ganga and the Brahmaputra, the northern rivers, and then Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri in the peninsular rivers. That's it. So don't basically, and if you want the detailed list, we have done another session, that is the Conquer Prelims portion of the static portion of geography. Take a look at that, where I have provided you with a detailed list of the rivers, origin, tributaries, and the important cities which lie on the banks of that river. So that should be sufficient. Okay. So in this particular case, what are the correct ones? Dhuandhar Falls, are they present across river Narmada? This is where Dhuandhar Falls are present. Okay, they are found across Narmada. But are they found in the Malwa region? No. Malwa region is the western portion here of Madhya Pradesh. They are not in the central eastern portion. So first statement incorrectly matched. Hundru Falls in the region of the Ranchi Plateau of Chota Nagpur Plateau in large, and that is basically on river Subarnarekha. This is correctly matched. Garsopa Falls found the longest or in fact, the highest waterfall in India? Is it found across river Netravati? No, it is found across river Sharavati. Right? Incorrectly matched. So here the correct answer is A. Now, what if you find such kind of absolute factual questions which are there? Absolute factual questions. It can happen that different such kind of matching can be there. Please do not risk a negative mark. Always remember, one such factual question is not going to determine whether you clear the prelims examination or not. As you would have seen, UPSC consistently gives you a lot of opportunities in the portion of physical geography. Get that physical geography very clear and correct. You don't have to rely on these absolute factual questions which are out there. Okay, so reduce and minimize your risk in these. If you know it, fair enough. But if you don't know it, don't get perturbed. Don't worry at all that you are leaving or skipping these kind of questions. Okay. Now, here, after this, consider the following statements. Jhelum River passes through Wular Lake. Krishna River directly feeds Koleru Lake. Meandering of the Gandak River formed the Kanwar Lake. Now, if you have seen our video on Ramsar sites, we have discussed all these three lakes. All these three are the Ramsar sites, if you recall our discussion on that video, right? So that is why those of you who have not taken a look at the video on Ramsar sites, please take a look where we have discussed all the important Ramsar sites out there. Jhelum River passes through the region of the Wular Lake. Yes, which is a controlling flow in terms of the amount of water that flows through the river Jhelum. So that is basically a freshwater lake. Krishna River directly feeds the Koleru Lake. No. Koleru Lake lies in between Krishna and Godavari. That is where, if you remember, we have discussed that at one point of time, that Koleru Lake was actually a lagoon, a backwater, because it was in the coastal area. But as the eastern coast experienced emergence, it is an emergent coastline that came to the interior. So it was no longer a coastal area. It lies between the Krishna and the Godavari, to the south of Godavari, to the north of Krishna, fed by seasonal streams. Incorrect. Then, meandering of Gandak River forms the Kanwar Lake, or the Kanwar Tal, or the Kabar Tal as it is referred to. So it is not the meandering of the Gandak River. Basically, the Gandak River, you will, or the Kanwar Tal, you will observe, lies between the Gandak-Kosi belt, right? So here, again, this is incorrect. So the correct answer in this case is A, that is only 1. Okay, I hope understood. Consider the following pairs, another one of those factual questions. This is about the reservoirs and the states where you will find them. Ghat Prabha, Telangana, Gandhi Sagar, Madhya Pradesh, Indra Sagar, Andhra Pradesh, and Maithan in the region of Chhattisgarh. Now, if you take a look at it, Ghat Prabha is present in the region of Karnataka. After all, river Ghat Prabha is a stream, or is a tributary, a right-hand tributary or right bank tributary of river Krishna. So it is not present in Telangana. Gandhi Sagar, that is present across the region of the Chambal Basin. So that is correct. Then Indra Sagar, is it situated in the case of Andhra Pradesh? If you talk about Indra Sagar, so this is the map associated with the important dams and the rivers that you have. That will be useful for your reference. So if you talk about Indra Sagar, across Narmada, not situated across Andhra Pradesh. So this is incorrect. And then the Maithan Dam. Maithan Dam is present, or is constructed, across Damodar River Valley. So in fact, the Maithan Dam project is one of the earliest post-independent multi-purpose river valley project which has been implemented in India in order to improve the associated aspects of irrigation, drinking water supply, and so on. So it is not present in Chhattisgarh. It is present at the border area between Jharkhand and West Bengal. So the fourth statement is incorrect. So here A, that is only one pair, is the one which is correctly matched. Then after that, Gandikota Canyon of South India was created by which of the following rivers? Now, it is situated, even if you know the state where this is situated, you can significantly improve your chances of getting this correct. So, Gandikota Canyon is present in which state? It is present in the region of Andhra Pradesh. It is a canyon which has been developed in the sedimentary rock system by the river Pennar, right? So, it is situated in Andhra Pradesh, and it is basically by river Pennar. If you take a look at the other rivers, Kaveri River, basically originating from the Brahmagiri hills in Karnataka, moving from Karnataka straight into Tamil Nadu, will not enter the region of Andhra Pradesh. Manjara, right bank tributary of river Godavari, that will again not be entering into that area around Gandikota Canyon. Tungabhadra, a tributary of river Krishna, present in the region of Karnataka. So only one river is there which moves through that location. So that idea about the location also, so that is why any of the places in news, look into that. That will help you solve these factual questions. Which of the following, consider the following rivers. Now, Brahmani, then Nagavali, Subarnarekha and Vamsdhara. Which of these rise from the region of Eastern Ghats? Now, when we talk about the region of Eastern Ghats, so that is the one starting from the region, spreading around the region of Odisha, moving all the way till the region of Tamil Nadu. So in this case, which of them originate from the region of Eastern Ghats here? Think about it. So basically, when you take a look into it, Brahmani River originates to the north of the region of Eastern Ghats by the confluence of the Koel River. So this is incorrect. Nagavali is the one which originates from the region of Eastern Ghats. Subarnarekha originating again from the Ranchi Plateau. So that is much north in the region of the Chota Nagpur Plateau. That is not where it originates from the Eastern Ghats. And Vamsdhara, it again through the region of Odisha, Andhra Pradesh. So this is correct. Anyways, if you could eliminate 1 and 3, that could be one way to solve it. Again, otherwise, I would say, if let's suppose we are having any kind of difficulty in this. So, right, any kind of difficulty if we are facing in these factual questions, please don't get worried. Please skip these kind of factual questions in that case. With reference to the Indus River system, which of the following 4 rivers, 3 of them pour into one of them, which joins the Indus directly? Among the following, which one is such a river that joins the Indus directly? So here, basically, when you take a look at it, right, ideally, it is basically supposed to be, again, it was a controversial question in terms of Chenab and Satluj. Now, these Panjnath, or the stream of 5 rivers, they eventually drain into Indus, and the confluence point is Mithankot in Pakistan. Now here, what is a tributary and which is the main river? That can be the confusing point. But if you take a look into it, 3 of them pour into one of them, which joins the Indus directly. Okay, so which are the 3 of them? If you take a look into it, Ravi, Byas and Chenab. They will drain into Satluj, and that is when the Satluj will end up draining eventually into the case of river Indus. This was one of the controversial questions in terms of the answer associated. Okay. Now, what constitutes a main river and what is referred to as a tributary? What will we think about the main river and which of them will be considered a tributary? So basically, always remember this. It is never only about the volume of water. In fact, when the tributary of river Krishna, river Bhima, when it joins with river Krishna, till that point of time, Bhima is substantially larger. But what makes Bhima the tributary and not Krishna the tributary? It is basically the channel slope, the channel gradient and the channel morphology, which is continued from the prior point of confluence to the later aspect as well. That is considered to be one of the tributaries, right? So if let's suppose you have a stream which is draining like this and another stream which moves here. Now, if the channel gradient, the channel width, the kind of flow that is consistent, what is referred to as channel morphology or the change in the channel, if that is maintained, then that will be considered as the main river, the other one will be the tributary. So here if you observe Satluj, here you have Chenab, and that joins at Mithankot in Pakistan. Okay? Yes, correct. Now consider the following pairs: Pandharpur, river Chandrabhaga, Tiruchirappalli, Kaveri, and Hampi, Malaprabha. Which of the pairs given above are correctly matched in terms of on the banks of the famous river? Now, if you think about this, basically, Pandharpur lies on the banks of Chandrabhaga. Pandharpur is a famous pilgrimage spot in the region of Maharashtra. So you have Chandrabhaga, which small stream which drains through that. Tiruchirappalli has thrived on the banks of river Kaveri. Hampi lies on the banks of river Tungabhadra, not on the banks of Malaprabha. So it lies on the banks of Tungabhadra. Okay, so this is incorrectly matched. So here, which of them are correctly matched? The correct answer is going to be A, that is 1 and 2 only. Okay, very good. Yes, Tungabhadra. Now, consider the following pairs in terms of the glaciers and the river which originates from those glaciers. Bandarpuch, Yamuna. Yes, around the region of Yamunotri is where you will find the Bandarpuch glacier to be present, and that eventually leads to formation of Yamuna, and the Yamuna meets river Ganga at the region of Allahabad or Prayagraj, right? Then Barashigri. Barashigri leads to, it is present around the region of Baralacha Pass, and that drains and feeds the Chandra river, which ends up forming the Chandra and the Bhaga stream, forming later on river Chenab. These two are correctly matched. You have only one option which tells you both of them are correctly matched. But nonetheless, Milam Glacier, Mandakini, incorrectly matched, right? Then Siachen is where you have Nubra. Zemu. Zemu is one of those glaciers present in the region of Sikkim, which becomes one of the feeder streams into river Tista. Okay, so that basically becomes river Tista. Yes, very good, Dipakshi. Mandakini is the one which originates from the region of Kedarnath. Okay, and basically you have Milam Glacier, which ends up generating a small stream which meets with river Alaknanda. Okay, so that is basically where you have these streams. So 3 and 5, they are incorrect. Okay, now then with reference to river Tista, Tista is always in news owing to the Indo-Bangladesh conflict and the issues associated. The source of river Tista is the same as that of Brahmaputra, but it flows through Sikkim. Is the source of river Tista and Brahmaputra same? Brahmaputra originates from the region of the Chemyangdong Glacier near Lake Mansarovar. Tista originates from the region of Sikkim, one of the largest larger rivers of Sikkim. So this is incorrect. 1 is incorrect. River Rangit originates in Sikkim and is a tributary of river Tista. That is correct. Then river Tista flows into the Bay of Bengal on the border of India and Bangladesh. Here, observe, it flows into Brahmaputra, which then drains into the region of Bay of Bengal. Incorrect. So here, correct answer is 2 and 3. So in general, in the portion of rivers and tributaries, you would have covered that. Raidak originates very close to the region of Zemu Glacier. Yes, Animesh, correct. That is correct. Yes, Samar, that is correct. Okay. Now, which of the following is or are the tributaries of Brahmaputra? Dibang, Kameng, and Lohit. Now, out of these, all of them, in fact, they form the tributaries of Brahmaputra. Lohit is the one which meets the earliest at the region around the town of Sadia. After this, Brahmaputra enters the plain area. Prior to the meeting of river Lohit, the river is moving through the mountainous terrain in Arunachal. That is where it is known by the name of Siang. Okay. Now, after this, Subansiri is been in news. Why? Because of the multiple hydroelectric projects which are being constructed. So Subansiri, and then Kameng, that is again a tributary. So all these are the tributaries of Brahmaputra. Continuously for 2 years, UPSC had asked you the tributaries of Brahmaputra. So that is why I am telling you the 7 major river systems. If you want to get hold of this, only the 7 of the river systems, that is important for you to understand. Other than that, the places in news. If UPSC tends to throw a curveball outside that, well, then nobody will be able to solve it. So you are in the clearing in that. Consider the following rivers. Which of them are the tributaries of river Godavari? So river Godavari, Vamsdhara we have discussed, originating in the region of Eastern Ghats, moving through Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, right? Indravati is one of the left bank tributaries of Godavari, moving through the state of Chhattisgarh, where you have the very famous Indravati Tiger Reserve, which is situated left bank tributary. Pranahita. Pranahita is the combined water of Vardha, Wainganga and Penganga, which ends up joining river Godavari again from the left bank side. So this is also a tributary of Godavari. Penar is the one which drains to the south of Godavari. It is not a tributary of Godavari. So the correct answer is D, that is 2 and 3 only, right? So here the major river systems that you will the major tributaries, you have Purna, you have Vardha, you have Wainganga, Penganga, Pranahita, Indravati, Sabri, then you have Manjra. Manjra is the important right bank tributary that you need to know, owing to the water storage structures which are in use to provide water in the drier areas of Vidarbha in Maharashtra and the dry area of Telangana. With the help of water storage structure like the Nizam Sagar, the Singur, which has been constructed across the region of or the river of Manjra. Okay? Yes, Maner is also one of those. Yes. Now, again, observe a similar question which was asked, not exactly about Brahmaputra, but very similar to that. Consider the following rivers, Barak, Lohit and Subansiri. Which of the above flows through Arunachal Pradesh? Now, we have just seen about Lohit, we have seen Subansiri. So, we know that they will move through the region of Arunachal. But where is Barak? Barak is the one which drains like this. Very known and notorious for cloudburst, flooding, and also massive landslides which occur across the banks of Barak. So here, Barak does not drain through Arunachal, but Lohit and Subansiri, they will. So the answer in this case will be B, that is 2 and 3 only. Okay? Now, some portions associated with agriculture, not the ones associated with the current affairs, but in general, what you should target. Consider the following states, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Himachal Pradesh and Tripura. How many of the above are generally known as tea producing states? Why landslide occurs generally across the Barak Valley, Lalita, is because of very heavy concentrated rainfall which occurs. That heavy concentrated rainfall leads to the flooding, that leads to slope weakening from the lower end. So if you consider any particular slope, this portion of it weakens. So there is a slippage which is caused, and that eventually leads to the slumping of the entire slope cycle. So that is basically the detailed aspect of it. Don't need to know that detailed aspect, just think about it. In the region of Barak Valley, lot of concentrated rainfall, cloudburst events, that will always lead to landslides. Okay? Now, here, Andhra Pradesh, is it a tea producing state? No. The conditions required for cultivation of tea, what is the condition required? Rainfall should be 50 centimeter or higher. Temperature to the range of 15 degrees Celsius to around almost 28 degrees Celsius is what the tea is good at, but they can tolerate up till 30, right? But ideally 15 to 25. Then No standing water. That means presence of slope. Okay, so in this particular case, Andhra Pradesh, not a tea growing zone. However, those of you preparing for this year or the next year, please keep in mind, Andhra Pradesh, Araku Valley is in news owing to the Araku coffee. So please keep in mind that particular portion for your prelims examination, where that is. Some way or the other, that can be asked. Okay. Kerala, it is particularly the region around Idukki, particularly the northeastern part of Kerala, around the region of Munnar, you will find the conditions for Nilgiri teas. That is the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. Himachal Pradesh, around the region of Palampur, in the portion of other areas of Himachal Pradesh, Tripura, and the portions of Northeast. So here, see, that is only 3 states. That will be the correct answer. Okay? Yes, West Bengal, Assam, these are very ideal for tea cultivation. Right. Now, the crop is subtropical in nature. A hard frost is injurious to it. It requires at least 210 frost-free days and 50 to 100 centimeter of rainfall for its growth. A light, well-drained soil capable of retaining moisture is ideally suited for the cultivation of the crop. Which one of the following is that crop? Cotton, jute, sugarcane, or tea? Here, basically, a simple, straightforward question. The answer is going to be cotton, right? Cotton is a kharif crop which, by the amount of rainfall received after the monsoons, that is sufficient for the cultivation of the crop. It has got a 6 to 7 months of growing period, and during that, occurrence of frost basically prevents the exchange of air with the roots, and that leads to the wilting of the crop in itself. So frost-free days are required in this, and it is a kind of a rain-fed crop. Not much amount of rainfall is required. So 50 to 100 centimeters, fair enough. Okay, so that is the case of cotton. Yes, Animesh, if you get 210 for frost-free days, that is associated mostly with the cotton crop. Then associated with minerals. You had a question which was asked directly, and that again was associated with the news, but it was about ilmenite and rutile. So, why tea is not in Andhra Pradesh? In certain pockets it is grown, but it is not known as a tea producing state, because look at the conditions required for tea, my dear Summer. For the cultivation of tea, you require 150 centimeter of rainfall and above. That 150 centimeter of rainfall, in very restricted area you will observe, otherwise you don't observe it. In general, the amount of rainfall is to the lower extent of 120 centimeter, because it is present in the region of the Eastern Ghats, and during the advancing monsoon, rainfall is not received. Coastal Andhra Pradesh receives rainfall some amount during the time of retreating and northeast monsoon, but again, the hilly areas where you have the sloping ones, they don't have that low temperature which is required. Okay, so that is basically the difference. Why in Andhra Pradesh? So apply your logic in terms of the reasons, keep your logical alarms on, you will be able to get these questions correct. Okay. What is the concept of ice-free, frost-free? Because see, when in the case of cotton, what happens? It is rain-fed. Rain-fed means rainfall which has happened, that is what is basically dragged away from the soil. After all, black soil is very good at moisture retention. So that is where cotton is typically grown either in black soil or in alluvial soil regions. Both of them are well aerated. But when you have the development of frost, that aeration to the root nodules, that is prevented. So that is when the roots in itself, they start to wilt. And that will lead to the yellowing of the plant and eventually the death of the cotton crop as well. The bales of cotton, that won't develop. So that is why frost-free days are basically required in the case of cotton. Okay, I hope it is understood. Ilmenite and rutile, these are available currently abundantly available in certain coastal tracts in India, are rich sources of which of the following? Now, when we talk about the ilmenite and rutile, They are basically, rutile is what? It is TiO2, titanium dioxide. So that is the case of D, titanium, right? So that is where you will have the presence of, and again, titanium was in use owing to the utility in the other sectors. Now, one of the other questions with minerals we will do so that you get an idea. With reference to India, consider the following statements. Monazite is a source of rare earth. It is correct. Monazite contains thorium. That again is correct. Monazite occurs naturally in the entire Indian coastal sands. An absolute term. It is found in the coastal area, but not in the entirety of the coastal area. No mineral can be found in the entirety of the coastal sand. 3 is incorrect, and basically eliminate 3, you will get the answer. In India, government bodies only can process or export monazite because it contains thorium, which is very important strategically for energy requirement and for other utilities as well. So this is also correct. Okay, so the correct answer in this case, very abundantly found in which of the coastal areas? Kerala coast is where you will find a lot of monazite sands. Yes, also in Jharkhand you will find some amount of monazite. Okay, now then coming to certain questions associated with world map. Now here also understand some of the questions we have segregated which will be covered in IR when it comes to world map, but the other ones relevant for the world map we will cover here. Consider the following pairs, the rivers and where do they drain into. Mekong, we have recently covered that in places in news. Now Mekong drains into South China Sea. Mekong, one of the larger rivers of Southeast Asia, basically forming the boundary, natural boundary between Laos, Myanmar, and also in between Laos, Thailand to some extent, that drains into South China Sea, not into Andaman Sea. Okay. Then Thames. Thames is basically the one which drains, is it the one which drains into Irish Sea? No. Thames drains into North Sea. Beautiful. North Sea. Okay. Right. Volga. Volga, one of the largest rivers of the region of Europe. It drains into which sea? Caspian, due to which Caspian has got a varying salinity levels. The northern portion of Caspian where Volga enters, fresh water. The southern portion of Caspian, substantial amount of evaporation, not enough precipitation, no fresh water influx. Southern portion of Caspian, saline water around the region of the Gulf of Karabagaz. So this is correct. This is basically correct. Then you have Zambezi. This is incorrect. Thames drains into North Sea. Zambezi is almost the 4th largest river in Africa, around the central southern portion of Africa. It drains into Indian Ocean around the region of Mozambique. So here the correct answer is C, that is 3 and 4 only. Right? Asif, which is the explanation, which is the question which is not understood, my dear? Please let me know. Which is the question for which you want a detailed explanation? Whichever question I can see scrolling around, I basically am targeting those. If any of the question has not been understood, please let me know. We will definitely end up explaining that again. However, if those have been explained or covered earlier in places in news, in the case of the Ramsar sites, that is again something where a detailed explanation is not being provided. But for all the other ones, a detailed explanation has been provided. Right? Saurabh, one question from Geomorphology. Why moraines and drumlins a feature of glaciation? Because during the time of glaciation, it is at that point of time where you will observe a large amount of glacial erosion. Because when the glacial volume is high, that is when you will have this kind of plucking action, abrasion action by the glaciers which are taking place. And that is why they are generally observed during the glacial period, that is during the ice ages. And that is where you will find those deposits which are happening. It is when they melt in the interglacial period, that is when you find the remnants in the form of the drumlins, eskers, and so on. Okay? Now, which world rivers to do? Please only look at the places in news. That's it. The places and the rivers in news. That is all that you do. For example, Rio de Plata has been in news substantial amount of time this year. Parana River, that has been in news. So whatever we have covered in the portion of places in news, that should be sufficient. Okay? Right? Now, method by which we are in a position to attempt a fact-based question. See, in case you have a doubt between two of the questions, two of the options, still go for an attempt. If you are, let's suppose, in the case of Dhuandhar Falls, the Malwa Plateau or the Malwa region and Narmada. If you know Dhuandhar Falls moves to the limestone-rich regions of the region around Jabalpur, fair enough. You can take an attempt. But if you have no clue about river also or the Malwa Plateau also, leave that question. Okay? Please understand that. Right? And world most important river. World important river. So Ganesh, basically take a look at the playlist where we have covered since the month of September all the various places in news, where we have covered rivers like Volga, we have covered rivers like Mekong. Mekong is in news owing to the Golden Triangle to the east of India. Then we have covered river Parana. We have covered all these major streams. So take a look into these places in news. That shall be sufficient for your coverage overall. So it is not to say that all the questions will be asked from there, but that will be the comprehensive coverage that you can go ahead. Okay? Now, we move ahead. Right. So basically, we move ahead in the another question which was asked in 2024 about the region, name of the mountain range, and the type of mountain. So basically, Central Asia, Vosges Fold Mountain. So there are two types of mountains in general. One is the case of the fold mountain, another is block mountain. Now, fold mountain is created why? When you have, let's suppose, a particular land area which gets compressed, so that is when you can have a fold mountain. But in the same land area, let's suppose due to compression there is development of cracks which pushes the central portion upward. That is what will lead to the generation of block mountain, what is known as the horst and the graben, right? For example, Vosges, Vindhyas, they are the case of the block mountains where you have multiple different kind of the reverse faults, right? Combination of two reverse faults will lead to the formation of the block mountain, right? So here, Central Asia, Vosges Fold Mountain, incorrect. Vosges is a block mountain situated in Europe. Europe Alps block mountain. Alps is situated in Europe, but is a fold mountain. It is not a block mountain. North America Appalachians, is that a fold mountain? It is. So when we talk about the region of North America, in the eastern part of the US, you have the presence of Appalachians which were created when prior to Pangea, you had that landmass which collided with the region of the Scottish Highlands. That is where the geographical or the geological rock structure are very similar. It is referred to as Saurabh, it is referred to as residual mountain also, because what is a residual mountain? Residual is, it is no longer the same mountain range as it used to be, and a lot of it has been eroded or has been degraded. So that is the case of residual mountain. Aravalis also come into the category of residual mountain, but they have also been created by the process of folding. Excuse me. So North America, eastern part of America, Appalachians are present, and that is a fold mountain. South America, Andes. West coast of South America, Andes, created due to oceanic continental convergence. It is again a kind of a fold mountain. So here, how many of the above are correctly matched? You have B. This is a simple question. I hope anyone who has done the basics of geography would be able to cover this, right? Now, after this, we move on to the next question. Which of the following have shrunk or immensely dried up in the recent past due to human activities? In this pattern, shall we also prepare the table on the rivers and their drain? No, not required. If you are aware of where the river drains, you can apply your logic to form the drainage pattern also, right? So where the river is draining, what is the kind of aspect there? That is more than sufficient. Okay, so here, basically, which of the following has or have shrunk, immensely dried up? So this is again associated with the places in use. So here, if you observe, it is the Aral Sea. Aral Sea, as compared to earlier, there has been substantial and significant amount of evaporation which has happened, and also due to encroachment, there also the size has been reducing. So here the answer is A, that is one only, that is Aral Sea. Okay. Monica, absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. If you have formed the basics and if you have understood the basics, advisable to prepare your own topic-based notes, and topic-based notes is what will give you the content to write answers. So first attack the topic-based notes and then go for it. By the way, this Aral Sea, which is situated in Caspian, this basically is the region around what was at one point of time also referred to as the Oxus. And that has been referred to in many of the geological aspects in terms of the origin of the river streams in this particular area. Okay. Now, consider the following statements. The Red Sea receives very little precipitation in any form. No water enters Red Sea from rivers. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? Now see, Red Sea was in news owing to geopolitical aspects. While one of the geopolitical questions of IR was asked, but UPSC has asked you a geography-based question as well. So Red Sea receives very little precipitation in any form. Absolutely. Basically, if you think about it, where is the case of Red Sea? Where does Red Sea lie? Red Sea basically lies in the region of the subtropics, right? So here, surrounded by the desert area. So the rainfall is not very high. It is very narrow, right? And it is expanding. Red Sea is expanding because of the breaking of the African plate across the Nubian plate. So that is why Red Sea is slightly expanding. But nonetheless, it is very narrow. So moist winds are not very common in the region of Red Sea. And observe this Red Sea, there is no stream that you will observe to be draining in the region of Red Sea. So that is where you have to understand the aspect associated. So here, Red Sea receives very little precipitation in any form. Correct. No water enters Red Sea from rivers. That is also correct. In fact, it is this particular reason why salinity levels of Red Sea is very high. Salinity levels are very high. Almost to the range of 41 parts per thousand. Average salinity level of the oceans is how much? 35 part per thousand. Red Sea has higher salinity. Right. Okay. Now, if you are aware about the location of the Red Sea, the surrounded by desert, you can always understand that. Now, one of the following regions has the world's largest tropical peatland. This can be ascribable to environment question as well, which holds about 3 years worth of global carbon emissions from fossil fuels. After all, peatlands are the natural sinks of carbon dioxide and carbon storage, and the possible destruction of which can exert detrimental effects on global climate. Which one of the following denotes that region? Out of this, Amazon, Congo, Kikori, and Rio de la Plata. So which of them is one of the largest tropical wetlands. It is basically the Congo Basin. Kikori is present where? Kikori is present in the region of the area of Papua New Guinea, right? Rio de la Plata in the region of South America, having two capital cities at the boundary region of Rio de la Plata. Okay? Now, it is this Congo Basin. How do we know this? That it is important for the case of peatlands. Peatlands are very vital storage of carbon stock and carbon dioxide. It is in these peatlands where if their water is lost, carbon emission will lead to further amount of warming. That is why you had the very famous Brazzaville Declaration, which we study in environment and ecology. Brazzaville Declaration for conservation of peatlands. Okay, where is Brazzaville? That is your answer, peatlands. Okay. Other large area of peatlands is also to be found in the region around Siberian highlands. There also you will find lot of peatlands. Okay. Now, a simple one, a straightforward one. The longest border between any two countries in the world is between which one? Canada and the US, Chile and Argentina, China and India, Kazakhstan and the Russian Federation. That is basically Canada and the US. Peatland. Okay. So when we talk about peatland, you see, peatland is a marshy area with submerged vegetation. Submerged, dead and existing vegetation. Okay. So if you consider any of the areas like this, let's suppose this is covered by shallow amount of water. It is not very deep, like a lake, large lake if you can imagine. Okay. So generally found in regions where you have moisture abundance. And on top of that, in these areas, you will find lot of vegetation which is submerged, which is dead. Now, because of not enough supply of oxygen, there is no decomposition, active decomposition which happens. Some decomposition does happen nonetheless. So this is very rich in terms of organic matter. That is where you have the peaty soil also. Peaty soil, a kind of a soil variety that has got lot of organic matter. So here, all this carbon compound from the vegetation which has captured the atmospheric carbon dioxide, that is trapped and that is deposited. So it is a source of carbon capture. That is a peatland. Okay. Now, here it is similar to wetlands in terms of its physical attributes. Yes. Consider the following countries: Finland, Germany, Norway and Russia. How many of the above countries have a border with North Sea? So if you take a look at the North Sea, so here Norway shares a border with North Sea. North Sea is very rich in which mineral? North Sea is abundantly rich when it comes to fossil fuels, right? So there it lies the prosperity of the region of northern or the Nordic countries. So Norway shares a boundary. Germany also shares its boundary. Finland lies to the east of Sweden, so it doesn't share a boundary. Again, this is an area we have covered repeatedly under places in news as well. So there, the case of Finland and Russia, they will not share boundary. Germany and Norway will share the boundary. So only two, that is B, will be the correct answer in this. Okay. Now, which one of the following is part of the Congo River Basin? Now, Congo drains through the central portion of Africa to the west direction, right? But if you take a look at the other regions, so Cameroon is the one which lies in the Congo Basin. Nigeria is to the north of the northwest of the Congo Basin. Nigeria is drained by the the Niger River, where you have Lake Volta, etc., which are formed. Then you have South Sudan, which is present in the northeastern part of the Congo Basin, where you have the Darfur area, always in news for the past 5 to 7 years. Uganda, present to the eastern extent. So here, the straightforward answer is the region of Cameroon. Peat coal is also associated with it, with the region of the peatland. See, that peatland, if it lies like that, and if the further deposition happens, then that vegetation, which is basically submerged, that first will get converted into dark brown soil, very marshy soil. Further carbonification, that is enrichment of carbon over a period of millions of years, will lead to the formation of peat. That further, if it is allowed, lignite, further bituminous, then further anthracite. Okay? Now, consider the following countries, again because of the region in news, which share a land border with Ukraine. Which of this basically shares a land border with Ukraine? Not because UPSC wants you to learn all the various countries and its border, simply because Ukraine was in news and people were evacuating out of that particular place, right? So the passages of evacuation, they became very, very important. Okay, right. So here, which of these? Basically, if you take a look at Ukraine, you have Romania and Hungary, right? Out of all the options given, Romania, Hungary, they become the ones which share the border. Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Latvia, Lithuania, they don't share any kind of border. So here, A, only 2. Correct? Now, again, there was a question asked for Afghanistan, bordering areas of Afghanistan, because of the carnage and the mayhem which was created due to the troop pull-out, the NATO pull-out from the region of Afghanistan, purely because of that reason. Now here, basically, which of these regions have borders with Afghanistan? So take a look at the region of Afghanistan. Where is Azerbaijan? Very far away. So eliminate that. Eliminate Azerbaijan. You will be able to eliminate 3 of them. Okay. Where is Kyrgyzstan? You have Tajikistan, which lies between Kyrgyzstan and Afghanistan. Okay. So again, then Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. Tajikistan, Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. Even if you are studying IR, if you are able to understand, let's suppose, the influence of the Northern Alliance in terms of the Afghan polity and the Afghan structure, that also in terms of the Uzbeks, the Tajiks, how they have basically sometimes supported the Northern Alliance, that also would have helped you answer, right? So here, C, that is 3, 4 and 5, that becomes the correct answer. Now, the term Levant, often heard in the news, roughly corresponds to which of the following regions? Levant is which area? Bordering regions of Syria, Mexico, African Sahel. Yes, South America around the region of Rio de la Plata. Take a look into that as well. Levant region again had been in news. So which is the Levant region? This is the region of Levant. That is Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan. Multiple questions are asked about this area. Please do not ignore this region. The political map, which are the ones bordering Mediterranean Sea, which are the ones which open into Mediterranean Sea, the question has been repeated. I will show it to you as well. So region along the eastern Mediterranean shores, that is basically the term Levant. That is where the ISIL, right? So that is Iraq and Levant, that also was prominently in news. Now, consider the following pairs. Adriatic Sea. Where is Adriatic Sea? Adriatic Sea is situated here. to the eastern part of the Italian peninsula. Adriatic Sea, Black Sea, Caspian Sea, Mediterranean, and the Red Sea. Which of the following pairs given above are correctly matched? Why these specific? That is the regional aspect, Samar. That is why they are referred to as the Levant region. So you had Iraq and Levant as a major geographical region in the area of West Asia. Okay. So here, basically Adriatic Sea, bordering region of Albania, that is correct. Then Black Sea. Does the Black Sea region basically border Croatia? Caspian Sea, around the region of Kazakhstan, we know. Then Mediterranean Sea, to the east, to the western part, shares its bordering country with Morocco. So these two are basically correct. So you have 1, 3, and 4. Black Sea doesn't share its border with Croatia. Red Sea is to the south of the Syrian region. So B, 1, 3, and 4, that is correct. Okay. Now, after this, the questions about Mediterranean. The Mediterranean Sea is a border of which of the following countries? Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria. Which of these countries share their border with Mediterranean? So take a look at Jordan. So if you take a look at Jordan, Jordan is basically here. No border with Mediterranean. This year also Jordan is in news. Take a look at Iraq. Iraq further to the east, right? So Iraq and Jordan are not there. So you have Lebanon and Syria, right? Lebanon and Syria, they are the ones which share the border with Mediterranean. Okay? Not the entire physical map of Europe around the region of Caspian. That is what you will take a look, you should take a look into, and also take a look into Gulf of Aqaba, Gulf of Suez, right? Sea of Marmara, the Bosphorus Strait, and the Dardanelles Strait. For this year, please pay attention to these water bodies. Okay? Now, again, look at the repetition. Which of the following countries of Southwest Asia does not open out into the Mediterranean Sea? So you have Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Israel. We have just covered it. Jordan does not share its border with Mediterranean. So Jordan does not open into the Mediterranean. Turkey is located in between which of the countries? Turkey, located between Black Sea and Mediterranean Sea. Similarly, UPSC had earlier, prior to 2013, asked a question about Georgia, located in between which seas, right? So here Turkey is situated between Black Sea and Mediterranean Sea. Okay, so please, this time associated with Turkey, look into the Bosphorus Strait. Bosphorus Strait connects which two water bodies? So you have Bosphorus connecting Black Sea and Sea of Marmara. Sea of Marmara. Okay. And then after that, the Dardanelles Strait. Dardanelles Strait. Sea of Marmara with the Aegean Sea. Aegean Sea is a remnant of the older Tethys Sea, which upfolded to form the Himalayas in the east. Okay. What is the correct sequence of the occurrence of the following cities in Southeast Asia? Now, when we talk about the capital cities of Southeast Asia, now here you have Bangkok, Hanoi, Jakarta, and Singapore. Now, out of these, the southernmost is that of Jakarta, right? Jakarta is southernmost. Then you have Singapore. Then further higher up you go, you have the region of Bangkok. Then north that you go, you have Hanoi in Vietnam. So southernmost is, so you have to find out the south to north. So the southernmost is Jakarta. So 3. Then you have Singapore, 4. Then Bangkok, 1. and 2. So that is basically the portion. Answer, that is C. Now here you also have this region, that is what is referred to as Isthmus of Kra. That also is frequently in news because Isthmus of Kra ends up joining which two land areas and separating which two water bodies, because China is planning to construct a canal across this area to ease the pressure on the Malacca Strait and to remove a choke point. So that Isthmus of Kra connects the Malayan Peninsula with the Southeast Asian region, and it separates which two water bodies? Gulf of Thailand with the Andaman Sea. Okay, so Isthmus of Kra also becomes important. Which one of the following pairs is correctly matched? Abyssinian Plateau. Abyssinian Plateau is present where? In the region of Africa around the country of Ethiopia. So it is not present in Arabia. Incorrect. Atlas Mountains, which are a kind of cascading fold mountains which have been present in the northwestern edge of Africa as the African plate has moved northwards. So this is correct. Guyana Highlands. Guyana Highlands are present where? To the north of the region of river Orinoco, around the region Orinoco, in the area of northern South America. So this is again incorrect. Okavango is the inland delta which is found to be present in the region of Africa, not in Patagonia. Patagonia is present where? In the region of Argentina, southern part of South America. So this is again incorrect. Now, these were the mapping major questions. Some of the, now around 8 to 7 questions, 7 to 10 questions are left. So that is about natural vegetation and rotation revolution. Consider the following states: Arunachal, Himachal, and Mizoram. In which of the above states do tropical wet evergreen forests occur? So basically, wet evergreen forest will occur where? Where the average temperature is higher than around 22 degrees Celsius. The amount of rainfall is to the higher extreme of 220 centimeter per year. That is where you will find tropical wet evergreen vegetation, right? So in this, out of this, only in Himachal Pradesh you will not find that. But in Arunachal, Mizoram, you will find that. So temperature around higher than 22 degrees Celsius and rainfall basically higher than or equal to 220 centimeter per year. Tropical wet evergreen. Where are they found across the country? Tropical wet evergreen forests are found in the region of the western part of Western Ghats, Andaman Nicobar Islands, and the region of northeastern states of India. That is where the evergreen forests are found. With reference to red sanders, sometimes seen in news, consider the following statements. It is a tree species found in southern part of India. It is one of the most important trees in the tropical rainforest areas of South India. Now, red sanders is a tree which is always in news. As per IUCN, it is requiring protection. It is put under endangered category. It is oftentimes shifted between vulnerable to endangered from one year to the other owing to the large-scale smuggling activity. This is a tree which is smuggled into the region of East Asia and Japan for acoustic instruments, furniture, and for other purposes as well. Now, this red sanders is what kind of a vegetation? It is basically categorized under dry deciduous. Dry deciduous. It is found in which area of the country? It is found in the region of Sheshachalam Hills, Sheshachalam region of Andhra Pradesh. So it is endemic to this particular region. It is to be found only in that particular area. It takes around 20 to 25 years to grow, and that is why it requires protection, because the smuggling and the cutting down does not allow the trees to grow. Now, the rainfall required is in between 70 to 100 centimeter. Okay? Right. Now, Virappan was known for sandalwood, which is moist deciduous. This is dry deciduous. So, it is a tree species found in a part of South India. Correct. It is one of the most important trees in the tropical rainforest area of South India. No. Dry deciduous, not tropical rainforest. So, this is the incorrect portion. So, the correct answer will be A, that is one only. If you travel through the Himalayas, you are likely to see which of the following plants are naturally growing there: oak, rhododendron, or sandalwood. So here, as you move through the region of the Himalayas, basically you have the montane vegetation as it is referred to. From the foothills, you will find the case of broad-leaved deciduous or broad-leaved equatorial forest. Then you move to wet temperate forest. Then further higher up, the conifers. Then further higher up, the alpine meadows. And then further higher up, you will come across the meadows. Basically mean the grasses. Trees are not there. Beyond a height of 25 or 3000 meters, you won't find the presence of trees. And beyond that, you will find the presence of the tundra vegetation. So out of this, sandalwood requires a slightly higher temperature. So sandalwood is to be found in the region around Nilgiris, around the region of the Karnataka plateau. So sandalwood is not the one which you find. But oak and rhododendron you find in the area. So this is basically 1 and 2. Yes, correct. 1 and 2 only, that is the correct answer. Now, in which of the following leaf modifications occurs in desert areas to inhibit the water loss? Now, this is about the type of plants that are referred to as xerophytes. So, where conservation of water is the main aim. So, that is why the plants undergo various modifications. First of all, they start developing pores in the stem rather than the leaves, because the leaves, all those pores will lead to loss of water through transpiration. So they don't have many leaves. If the leaves are there, they will have a waxy coating to prevent water loss. Otherwise, rather than leaves, they will have thorns. Now, they will have the stem having the green pores, so that food can be manufactured by the process of photosynthesis. But those stems, they become very easy prey for any of the herbivores, and they can chomp through the stems easily. So that is where they develop thorns. Like the cacti, they develop thorns on the stem. Other than that, they will always develop very deep roots to access water wherever possible. Many of the plants of xerophytes, they basically also have ephemeral characteristic. Ephemeral means absolute seasonal. That is referred to as ephemeral. So here, as soon as slightest amount of moisture or rainfall or precipitation occurs, immediately in a short span, there will be flowering, and then the propagation will happen, and then the plants will go into dormancy. So here, what are the modifications? Hard and waxy leaves? Yes. Tiny leaves or no leaves to prevent loss of water through transpiration? Yes. Thorns instead of leaves. This is also correct. So the correct answer is D, 1, 2, and 3. Now, then we come to the last set of questions associated with the rotation and revolution of planet Earth, which is asked, but then again tells you about the ease of scoring, and also why you don't need to chase the factual questions, because UPSC throws these kind of full tosses along the way as well. In the northern hemisphere, the longest day of the year normally occurs in. So when do we have the longest day of the year? That is across the June solstice or the summer solstice. That is 21st June. Isn't it? And when does that occur? Second half of the month of June, right? So that is the June solstice. Then again, another question about 21st June. On 21st June, the sun does not set below the horizon at the Arctic Circle, does not set below the horizon at the Antarctic Circle, shines vertically overhead at noon on the equator, shines vertically overhead at the Tropic of Capricorn. Now on 21st June, what do we mean by horizon? Horizon is that imaginary place where the sky appears to meet the land, right? So we say that the sun has set below the horizon and it is night time. The sun has risen above the horizon, it is daytime, isn't it? So when you say that does not set below the horizon means continuous daytime. So on 21st of June, when do we or where do we have the continuous daytime? So if you take a look at this, so in the month of June, what do you observe? The entire Arctic Circle, regardless of the amount of rotation, will always have the daytime. Because what differentiates the day and the night time, that is the circle of illumination. Circle of illumination, right? That lies basically beyond the Arctic. So Arctic will have continuous day, whereas the region of Antarctic Circle, observe this, regardless of how many rotations, Antarctic Circle will have a continuous night time. Sunrise will not happen. So in this case, the answer is sun does not set below the horizon at the Arctic Circle. Now, that is the case of the position of planet Earth. Now, again, another question which was asked last year on June 21 every year, which of the following latitudes experiences a sunlight of more than 12 hours? So we have seen Arctic Circle, continuous sunlight, right? So this will be one. Now on 21st of June, what is the location or the position of the sun? The sun is almost vertical over the region of the Tropic of Cancer. Tropic of Cancer, which passes through almost the central portion of the country, that is where it lies. So that is basically around Tropic of Cancer. Again, you will have more than 12 hours of sunshine. So the correct answer in this case will be D, that is 2 and 4. Okay. Now, variations in the length of daytime and nighttime from one season to another occurs because of which reason? Why is it that during the summer we have longer days, during the winter we have longer nights? Is it because of the Earth's rotation on its axis? No. Because let's suppose the axis would not have been tilted, the axis would have been straight and linear. Then in that case, regardless of how many rotations, you would have equal length of day, equal length of night. No variation in daytime and nighttime. So the first statement is incorrect. First option is incorrect. Earth's revolution around the sun in an elliptical orbit. Now in that case also, if we assume an elliptical orbit, let's suppose like this. Let's suppose here you have the sun, right? Now if the planet is not tilted, regardless of how far it goes, length of the day and the length of the night will end up being equal. So elliptical or circular orbit hardly makes any difference. Latitudinal position of the place. Again, think about it. Regardless of whether you are at equator, whether you are at the subtropics, or whether you are at the subpolar region, if the axis is straight, equal length of day, equal length of night. Why? Because the circle of illumination will equally end up dividing both the hemispheres. So equal duration of sunlight, equal duration of nighttime. Revolution of the planet on a tilted axis. It is because of the tilt where it appears, if you take a look at this animation, so it appears in this case, observe that the greater part of the northern hemisphere spends more time in sunlight, less time in the dark. So when the Earth appears to be tilted towards the sun, duration of daytime will be larger, duration of nighttime will be lesser. Whereas if you take a look at the southern hemisphere, it appears to spend less time in the sun, more time in the dark. Duration of nighttime will be longer, hence the heat lost will be more, and hence lower temperature or the winter season. So here D, revolution of the Earth on a tilted axis. Okay. Now coming to the final question. With reference to Coriolis force, which of the following statements is or are correct? It increases with the increase in wind velocity. It is maximum at the poles and absent at equator. Now, very simple question, basic concept if you have about this, you should be able to solve this. So, why do we have Coriolis force? First of all, why do we experience Coriolis force? Coriolis force is referred to as an apparent force. It is not a direct force, which basically means if let's suppose I'm standing at this place today, you are sitting where you are, you will not experience Coriolis force. But if a wind is moving from one latitude to another, there will be a Coriolis force in action. Why do we experience Coriolis force? Coriolis force is experienced because if you consider the planet as it is rotating, the speed of rotation is different at the region of equator. No, it is not a controversial question, Priya. It is a very straightforward and a direct question picked up directly from the NCERT. It is basically a kind of the speed of rotation that you observe that ends up reducing as you move to the region of the poles. Why? So consider, let's suppose, the various different areas, right? If this is, let's suppose, considered to be the poles, if this is equator, this is B. Now speed of rotation is what? Speed of anything will be what? Distance by time taken. If you assume that the time taken in one rotation is 1 day, right? 1 day, right? So speed is proportional to the distance covered. Now in one rotation, out of E, B and P, which will cover the maximum distance? The region of equator, that is where it will cover the maximum distance. So speed at E, or rather distance covered at E, will be much larger as compared to distance covered by B, which will be much larger as compared to distance covered by P. If you observe here, at P, distance covered is 0. So speed of rotation at E will be much higher as compared to speed of rotation at B, which will be much higher as compared to speed of rotation at P, which will be 0. Isn't it? So speed of rotation reduces as you move from equator to the region of poles. Now, what does it have to do with the Coriolis force? So that is where you have to think about the very famous, or the very simple rather, car example. If you have two objects which are moving at, let's suppose, similar speed, if you throw a ball from one object to another, the other person will be able to catch the ball easily. Let's suppose if you have this car A, car B. Let's suppose car A is moving at 20 kilometers per hour, right? Car B is moving at 200 kilometers per hour, If let's suppose A throws a ball to B, will B be able to catch it? No. B would have moved ahead by that point of time. So the object would have fallen behind, right? Apply the same logic. That means as the object moves from slower speed to higher speed, the object tends to fall behind. So if you have an object moving from slower latitude to the faster movement of the latitude, it will end up falling behind. Slower latitude to the faster latitude, it will end up falling behind. This is your rightward deviation. This is your leftward deviation. That is what leads to Coriolis force. So where will it be maximum? It will be maximum where the speed differential of rotation is the highest, right? So it is maximum at the region of the poles, and where the speed of rotation 5 degrees north of equator, 5 degrees south of equator, speed of rotation is similar, no deviation, absent at the region of equator. Increases with the increase in wind velocity. Absolutely yes. That is the basic concept why we have the formation of jet streams, right? When you have the velocity, wind velocity, which gets very high at a greater altitude due to the lack of frictional force, you will observe that the winds basically become parallel to the latitudes, which are known as the geostrophic winds, right? So that is again correct. Increases, Coriolis force bending increases with the increase in wind velocity. Very simple, straightforward question, picked up word by word verbatim from NCERT. That is why I'd always say, rather than running left, right, and center for the books, refer to the NCERTs, stick to the basics, repeat the same things as many times as possible, more than sufficient. So the answer in this is going to be C, that is both 1 and 2. Okay? Now, that basically brings us to the end of the session for today. Please do take a look at it. I hope the session has been helpful. I hope the session has provided you with understanding of the pattern of the questions and also analysis of which questions are relevant, which topics and concepts are important. Till we meet again, if you have liked the session, put that in the comment section below. And don't forget to click on the like, share, and the subscribe button. Till we meet again, take care. Goodbye. Thank you.